Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 2481, Under the Mountain of Holy Beings. Livid, Layden wordlessly stared at the corpse of the female patriarch of the sun-blind race. With a sneer showing on his expressionless face, Xavier commented dryly, "Huh. Her method of committing suicide is pretty unique." Hamish said in all seriousness, "The matriarch has taken her own life, which is equivalent to stopping suppressing the will of the divine land. It seems like she already knew who the successor is. The Time Sea and the Time Sea Forbidden Land existed for one reason, to hinder the awakening of the divine land's will. Chiyu provided the Nine Li race with a ship, the divine land, for them to escape, but they would have been in trouble if the divine land's will had awakened. The will of a world was usually volatile. All would be well if the will was kind. Otherwise, if the will was evil and violent, it could easily kill all the creatures in the divine land. The mission of the female patriarch of the sun-blind race was to suppress the divine land's will and keep it in its initial state. Back then, Nicholas and Hamish had every intention of killing and replacing the female patriarch. However, the idea was rejected by Layden. Layden was afraid that after the female patriarch's demise, the original will of the divine land would be liberated and have its one consciousness and conscience. By then, the divine land would no longer be under their control. Given that the Yellow Emperor guards were stronger than the natives of the divine land, they were very likely to become the first targets of the will. Based on the same reasoning, the matriarch had actively been suppressing the original will of the divine land, while selecting her own target in the process. In the Time Sea, the members of the sun-blind race had previously attempted to verify Zen's abilities and potential, but the results they had gathered were inconclusive. Afterwards, Zen seized the Time Jade Seal from many holy beings. Only then did the matriarch realize Zen's massive potential. Even then, she continued observing Zen's progress. This time, the Mountain of Holy Beings was opened in advance, and the matriarch could finally verify this fact. At that moment, she knew that her mission was over. She was even sure that the Yellow Emperor guards would not just stand by and would definitely attempt to stop her. So, the matriarch took the most sensible method, which was to kill herself. As a security measure, she even used the power of the Time Sword of Gods to commit suicide. Lorcan walked over and picked up the crystals scattered on the ground. He shook his head slightly and said, "This treasure is of no value after it breaks. This sword is not important. What really matters is who is her successor." Layden wondered aloud, his eyes trained on the three sun-blind warriors. Feeling Layden's chilly regard, the three warriors trembled slightly. "I am giving you 9 seconds. Say it, or the entire sun-blind race will die with you," Layden said calmly. To the Yellow Emperor guards, the sun-blind race's members were as inconsequential as ants. Besides, they knew various ways of extracting information from their targets by sifting through their memories. "It's Zen Luo," the sun-blind warrior in the lead cried out without hesitation. Before she died, the matriarch did not make them promise to keep the successor's identity a secret. Naturally, they were now under no obligation to do so. "Zen Luo." Layden was a little confused. "Ah, Lorena's son," Hamish uttered, not surprised to hear the answer. He brought those 9 Li guards to the divine land. Zen was the son of Lorena after all, so it made sense for him to assume control of the divine land. Hamish only wondered why the incident happened so suddenly and without a warning. "Oh, him," said Layden, nodding. "Isn't that too easy?" Xavier commented gleefully. "Those critters have been hiding in the forbidden area. All we need to do is to smoke them out and get rid of them." Touching his nose, he chuckled. "But it's not that easy to enter the forbidden area," Hamish warned. Salim, who was silent most of the time, squinted his eyes and commented, "In the past, we have opened and broken into a forbidden area. Although it was a bit troublesome, nobody could stop us. Several years after the divine land was opened, several Yellow Emperor guards stormed in and attacked. At that time, many members of the 9 Li race elected to hide in the forbidden area, because powerful restrictions were in place within the forbidden area to deter outsiders. However, with their combined forces, the Yellow Emperor guards managed to tear open the forbidden area and kill many members of the Nine Li race. The area was only a second-level forbidden area at that time, and the Divine Land has evolved since then. These days, the forbidden areas are nothing like what they used to be, retorted Hamish. Hamish, Layton replied, what you said is reasonable, but we must do it. Don't forget that there is still someone who can help us. At that time, the Yellow Emperor guards stepped into the Divine Land and became the mortal enemies of its people. The current situation in the Divine Land was completely different. The Yellow Emperor guards even controlled the Hall of Holy Beings, and there were so many holy beings that they could make use of. Lorcan, Salim, go and find Samuel as soon as possible. I want to see Zen's corpse before the Mountain of Holy Beings opens, ordered Layton expressionlessly. What about me? Xavier asked. Continue to collect blood for the sea-cracking skull, Layton said. Every single time, Xavier's mission ended up being the most complicated and the most difficult, but he did not dare to disobey Layton. He only asked unhappily, what about Hamish? He still needs to search for the other Yellow Emperor guards in the chaos. The most pressing problem of the Yellow Emperor guards was not Zen and his companions. In their eyes, the holy beings and true gods were nothing to be afraid of, and they would eliminate them sooner or later. They only needed to focus on the other Shore Realm warriors outside the Divine Land. However, the Mountain of Holy Beings had appeared ahead of time, which drew Layton's focus back. He realized that the creatures hiding in the forbidden area might ruin their plans. On the second day after the mountain's appearance, many demi-holy beings and consummate true gods gathered from all directions. However, after its appearance, the Mountain of Holy Beings did not open at once. It would still take a long time to open, but most warriors camped at the foot of the Mountain of Holy Beings in advance. Why did the Mountain of Holy Beings emerge 2 years in advance? A woman inquired. This woman was a consummate true god who led the Wen clan in a northern region of the Divine Land. Who knows? Anyway, I've been waiting for this day for years. This time, I'm going to lead the Huang clan to the Time Sea and own a floating island there after I become a holy being. Another man said with a fierce, determined expression on his face. He was the Grand Elder of the Huang clan in a northwest region of the Divine Land. Ha. A scholar-like man dressed in a long robe jeered, only 3 warriors at most are qualified to become holy beings when the Mountain of Holy Beings appears each time. Sometimes, only 1 warrior is given the title. I'm afraid you might even be disqualified to fight. To add insult to injury, he made a small salute toward the man, who harumphed in displeasure. If you're that leery of my strength, maybe we can fight now. When these people were gathered together, all kinds of exchanges and arguments were inevitable. Leland stayed at the edge of the crowd, staring blankly at the Mountain of Holy Beings. He was not counted among the top demi-holy beings, and it was extremely difficult for him to become a holy being. Even so, he would not give up this opportunity. Looking at the Mountain of Holy Beings, he thought of Zen. Zen was only a consummate true god, but his strength was formidable. He also seemed to carry a deep grudge toward the alliance of powerful clans. Will he come this time? Leland thought to himself. Chapter 2482, Chaos Winged Beast. Leland was surprised at the thought that crossed his mind. But he was soon smiling. Even if Zen had obtained great opportunities in Reincarnation Land, it was highly possible that he wouldn't be able to leave the Abyss Demon region alive facing the alliance of the powerful clans. But he had a faint premonition that Zen wouldn't die that easily. At this moment, a voice sounded close to them. We, in fact, have a greater chance of becoming holy beings this time. I hear that the strength of the alliance of powerful clans has weakened considerably when they explored the Abyss Demon region. All of them were almost killed. Holy beings can be reincarnated, but the demi-holy beings and consummate true gods of the clans are now dead. Even Nicholas's universe has collapsed. The one that collapsed not long ago was his. Where did you get the news? I have an old friend on a floating island. He told me, but keep this to yourselves. Don't spread this news. Leland's expression shifted to one of sadness at these words. Now that he knew the news of these deaths, it seemed to him that Zen had died along with them. Once the Mountain of Holy Beings had appeared, Zen and Mike returned to the Fairy Palace. The Infinity Ruler in his mind changed direction according to Zen's position. But it always pointed towards the Time Sea in the middle of the Divine Land. The Mountain of Holy Beings would be opened 3 months after it appeared. This time around, Zen had gathered all the godly ways, and had also taken his time to fuse them together. So he chose to cultivate in seclusion immediately after their return to the Fairy Palace. The power of the ways blending strike created by the fusion of more than 300 godly ways is extraordinary. If the 3,000 godly ways are fully integrated, his eyes glinted with excitement at this thought. But number 9527 was ready with a buzzkill the moment the idea came to Zen's mind. This method of ways blending energy has been tried before. Is it powerful? Zen asked. Of course, it's incredibly powerful, but only to warriors at the true God realm. This kind of power is ordinary to those at the other shore realm. So what you should do now is cross the sea of truth and cultivate the truth theurgy, number 9527 warned. Number 9527 could hardly understand Zen's stubbornness. It had warned Zen the first time it had seen the ways blending energy that it would not work. But Zen had still continued to explore the ways blending energy diligently. The true gods in the source world did not know the extent of the ways blending energy's power. Once different kinds of selected internal momentum came together properly, it could display an extraordinary level of power. But it would take a lot of time to comprehend the 3,000 different godly ways one by one. Wouldn't it be easier to use this time to cross the sea of truth and reach the other shore realm instead? According to them, studying the ways blending theurgy was a complete waste of time. But Zen was not born in the source world. Many people had told him that he could achieve nothing on the path of blending the godly ways, but he still believed in Chiyu's arrangement and chose to try it this time. Moreover, now that he possessed the Infinity Ruler, it was easy for him to comprehend a theurgy. Mastering the ways blending energy could also increase his own strength. So why not? Zen had calmed down after his conversation with No. 9527. The light on the godly plate in his body flashed and began to extract the faith energy, which then turned into traces of internal momentum. And then, the internal momentum of various colors transformed into mist of different shapes and came together slowly, mixing together. In the chaos, the clouds formed by the chaotic energy began to flow, albeit slowly. In fact, the speed of the flow of these clouds was not slow, but was outrageously fast to behold. The speed at which they moved and spread out was 100 times faster than that of a warrior at the other shore realm. Every cloud was unimaginably large. A single cloud was large enough that it could contain trillions of divine lands within it. So seen from a distance, these clouds seemed to be still. Within the clouds, several people stood on a cyan ship that was 1,000 feet long. Its surface flashed with a pale cyan light as it flew at an amazing speed. A huge beast ran ahead of the ship. It looked like a mantis, 4 wings on its back and a number of fine barbs on its abdomen. Thin tentacles spread out on the top of its head. It looked strange and had hateful countenances. Its body rippled under the cover of the chaotic energy. It was a chaos-winged beast that lived in the chaos, considered rare and precious in the source world. Its soul was especially priceless as it could be brought over to the other shore after it was refined. In the source world, anything that had anything to do with the other shore was precious, soul pills being a case in point. In fact, the power of the soul pills was considered ordinary. There were a lot of elixirs that were better than soul pills, but a majority of them couldn't be carried to the sea of truth or the other shore. This made them far less valuable than soul pills. This was also why soul pills could become the currency of the other shore. The chaos-winged beast is running so fast. We've chased it for many years, and now we've come to the bottom of the chaos. I want to go back to the source world. What kind of place is this? One of the men on the ship complained. So what? Once we catch the chaos-winged beast, our status in the other shore will be greatly enhanced. We will also receive a great reward when we return. Each of you can raise 1 star. The hardships we go through would pay off. The one who spoke was a young man dressed in a purple robe standing to the front of the ship. This young man had sharp eyes and a special aura that surrounded him. He was obviously the leader of the group. The moment he finished speaking, the chaos-winged beast suddenly let out a sound. The 4 giant wings on its back flashed with cyan light, and an irresistible space power spread out of them. These 4 giant wings contained the truth of void destruction. Dang it, it's going to run away again. Hurry up, a man on the flying ship shouted. The flying ship followed the chaos-winged beast into the space channel. They couldn't give up since they had chased after the chaos-winged beast for many years. The moment the flying ship got into the space channel, a man on the ship had a strange look on his face and cried out, "Master Clement. My yellow Emperor Magatama seems to be having a reaction." Clement glanced at this man in surprise. Someone standing beside him couldn't help but ridicule him. Do you know how vast the chaos is? The yellow Emperor Magatama's range of perception is limited. If you can encounter yellow Emperor guards here, my name is not Cosmo. Clement nodded in agreement. Yellow Emperor Magatama could allow the Yellow Emperor guards to communicate with each other. Distance was not a problem in the source world. But the source world was only a drop in the ocean compared to the chaos. How could one meet Yellow Emperor guards at the edge of such a chaos? Even Clement didn't believe what the man claimed. Seeing that no one was going to believe him, the man patted his waist gently and pulled out the Yellow Emperor Magatama. You better hear it for yourself then. Then they heard an ear-piercing screech from the Yellow Emperor Magatama. Chapter 2483, Communication. Listen, Clement said, as he signaled everyone to keep quiet. There might be a space crack in the clouds that is disturbing the Yellow Emperor Magatama. Messages were usually sent to them through the space fluctuation from the Yellow Emperor Magatama. Through it, Clement got to know the consequences of a space crack. A violent wave would definitely disrupt the Yellow Emperor Magatama. That's right, Godfrey, you are too paranoid. One of the others remarked. Godfrey felt his heart sink. He didn't realize that was what people thought of him. He started to put the Yellow Emperor Magatama away when, all of a sudden, it started making noise. Rustling, rustling, I'm at. Godfrey held the Yellow Emperor Magatama closely. The rest of the group was staring in awe. They stooped closer to listen closely. The Divine Land, rustling, rustling, it seems like someone's trying to reach us through the Yellow Emperor Magatama. They might be close by. Clement's eyebrows furrowed in deep thought. Which Yellow Emperor guard came to this place? A Yellow Emperor guard asked. What is this Divine Land, anyway? Not once have I heard of it, said Godfrey. The Divine Land was a name used by its residents to refer to their place, but it was a name unknown to outsiders. Thus, the warriors who weren't part of the Divine Land didn't understand it. Godfrey, try to communicate with the Yellow Emperor guard, Clement ordered. If we continue trying to chase the Chaos-Winged Beast, then perhaps we can find that Yellow Emperor guard. But he seems to have encountered some trouble. At that point, they were nearing the bottom of the chaos where it was bleak and deserted. It was not normal for a Yellow Emperor guard to idle around in that area, so he assumed that the Yellow Emperor guard must have encountered a huge trouble. Because of this, they had to reconsider their options. Godfrey replied with a curt nod. He brushed the surface of the Yellow Emperor Magatama with his finger. A green light beamed above the Yellow Emperor Magatama and it started to make noises. Hamish wasn't feeling optimistic. He knew they wouldn't have much luck at finding any Yellow Emperor guards near the bottom of the chaos. Hamish had attempted the same before the release of Layton and others, but to no avail. After many years, he gave up. This time, however, Layton gave the command to go on the mission, so Hamish had to pick up the Yellow Emperor Magatama again. Anyway, it wasn't difficult to activate it. It was much easier than collecting blood in the whole Divine Land. The Yellow Emperor Magatama continued to give off the faint green light. I'm Hamish, Hamish declared. I'm in the Divine Land seeking the help of Yellow Emperor guards. Hamish repeated these words over and over again like a chant. He was starting to feel dumb and pointless. Hamish recalled his days in the Silverwing Divine City. Back then, he had many divine citizens by his side. Unfortunately, Hamish could not do anything at will after Layton came out. He also didn't like to show off on the floating islands as Xavier did. Rustling, rustling. Hamish was starting to think his chant wasn't working, when suddenly the Yellow Emperor Magatama let out the rustling sound. The sound was so faint that Hamish almost missed it. Sometimes, it was only the space fluctuation being transmitted that was causing the Yellow Emperor Magatama to make those noises. However, that time was different. The sound was non-stop and it was growing louder by the minute. What? Hamish stared at the Yellow Emperor Magatama with confusion. Rustling, rustling, Hamish held the Yellow Emperor Magatama tightly and drew it closer to him. It was as if he was afraid that the sound would disappear. The voices coming from the Yellow Emperor Magatama meant there were Yellow Emperor guards nearby. We can finally get help, Hamish thought excitedly. They received so much pressure from the other Shore Realm warriors outside the Divine Land, finally, they were running into some luck with the reinforcements. Buzz. With a flick of his wrist and a wave of his hand, Hamish disappeared. The next minute, he was in the Hall of Holy Beings calling out Layton excitedly. Layton, I have great news about the Yellow Emperor Magatama. It finally reacted. Layton manipulated the sea-cracking skull without distractions so that it would swallow the blood. This task took a lot of control. Even he, as the owner of it, could easily be swallowed by it should he make the wrong move. Because of his utmost focus, he barely heard Hamish's announcement. After the sea-cracking skull finished the blood, Layton looked up with concern. Did it really react? He asked. Are there any Yellow Emperor guards nearby? Yes. Listen to this. Hamish handed the Yellow Emperor Magatama over to Layton. Suddenly, the Yellow Emperor Magatama was quiet. Layton glared at Hamish with a look of skepticism. I swear I heard it just now. Hamish insisted. Layton smiled. Perhaps you misheard, he said with a chuckle. He was doubtful from the beginning, anyway. It's impossible, Hamish refuted. Layton opened his mouth to speak when the Yellow Emperor Magatama caught their attention. I'm Godfrey, the voice coming from it said. Rustling, where are you? In the Divine Land, the top 3 powerful clans could be seen occupying a divine tree each. The Sword Clan had occupied the Sunset Tree for over 100 divine eras. That clan was originally formed by many first-tier clans that used to be separate. This all changed upon the arrival of a holy being. The first-tier clans had to be integrated, and the clans in the Sunrise Tree became a unified group known as the Sword Clan. Thus, the Sword Clan owed its roots to the Sunrise Tree, and their protection to the non-combat zone. Unfortunately, they had to give up the Sunrise Tree. Samuel ordered all clans who didn't join the alliance of powerful clans to give up the floating islands. The Sword Clan had no choice but to give up the floating island, completely aware of the consequences of their choice. As soon as they disaffiliated from the floating island, they'd make themselves an enemy of the alliance of the powerful clans. Not too long ago, the Yellow Emperor guards killed Harper in front of the holy beings of the Sword Clan. As a result, the truth of goodwill and malice disappeared along with the non-combat zone. The Sword Clan members were sullen to have reached their last days in the Sunrise Tree. The holy beings, the demi-holy beings, the consummate true gods and a lot of disciples in the Sword Clan left the Sunrise Tree and entered the Everest Spirit Mountain, leaving only a few people in the Sunrise Tree. They didn't want to submit to Samuel, and they also believed Mike. And on the other side of the Divine Land, the Moon Clan in the Hidden Tree had also made the same choice. They were on the way to the Swirl Forest. Chapter 2484, A Discussion. In the past, the Moon Clan and the Sword Clan could work together to fight against the Dongfang Clan. But now, the Yellow Emperor guards were much stronger than them, so they did not stand a chance to defeat them. They refused to make the same choice as other powerful clans, so the best option for them at this point was to retreat to the Forbidden Lands. A month later, at the Swirl Forest, Augustus was floating in the air. He gently brought his hands together and uttered, "Grow." Rumble. On cue, giant trees rose one after another, reaching out their leafy branches heavenwards. These trees grew rapidly, and before long they were towering trees swaying in the breeze. When the trees had grown to a certain height, the branches intertwined to form exquisite tree houses. This was a very easy thing for Augustus to do. Meanwhile, several holy beings were gathered in the fairy palace and an urgent discussion was underway. Sooner or later, the Yellow Emperor guards will attack us. If we really can't oppose them, then I will willingly surrender. Ha ha. The one who was speaking was Vanessa, the leader of the mysterious soul building. She looked like a girl of just 13 or 14. She had a delicate but intelligent face, full of irresistible charm. She was seated on the chair with her slender legs crossed gracefully. Vanessa, don't talk nonsense, reprimanded Moon. They knew Vanessa was joking. People who knew her well were fully aware of her personality, fiery and forthright. She was not the strongest among the holy beings, but the universe she had created was perfect. She had launched 3 universe battles and won every time. She had let the opponents go in 2 battles, and she had slaughtered a holy being by destroying his universe in the other battle. Other holy beings might pay allegiance to the alliance of the powerful clans, but it would be a cold day in hell before she would surrender. Mike has finally returned after going through a lot of suffering. Zen has also killed Nicholas for revenge. Unexpectedly, Samuel has risen to power and released all the Yellow Emperor guards. This is turning out to be a disaster, another person said from the other side of the hall. The man, who had a pair of weird-looking horns on his forehead, was Holy J, the Lord of the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land. He had been cultivating in seclusion all these years and had never showed up in the Divine Land. When he heard of the turmoil in the Divine Land, he, too, was flabbergasted and had to abandon his hermitage and come to the Divine Land to find out what was happening. The young man in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land on whom he had placed great hopes didn't disappoint him. After all, he had contributed nearly 1/3 of his strength source. Although it was a replenishable resource, it was quite a generous act for a holy being. When he finished his closed-door cultivation, he entered the Swirl Forest with the Moon Clan. Don't worry, I will fight it out with them, Woodruff, who was beside Holy J, said self-assuredly. Moon looked at Woodruff and asked, how exactly do you intend to fight with them? Woodruff was also aware of the difference between him and the powerhouses at the other shore realm. The holy beings had learned the truth of godly way in varying degrees. It would be an extraordinary feat for anyone to reach the consummation of the truth of godly way. The powerhouses at the other shore realm were undoubtedly very powerful. Mike said, "Since you've made your choice, I have something to say. Even if the Forbidden Land falls, we still have a place to retreat." The three holy beings of the Moon clan were surprised to hear Mike's words. Moon knew that Mike wouldn't talk without thinking. His eyes lit up as he asked, "Mike, what are you talking about?" Mike replied, "We can leave the Divine Land and make our home elsewhere." "I'm afraid we can't do that. The Yellow Emperor guards can still chase us and find us," Moon said sadly, shaking his head in disappointment at Mike's suggestion. Mike said, "The Yellow Emperor guards aren't invincible. We have powerful reinforcements outside the Divine Land, but they haven't yet broken the space barrier, so they are unable to enter the Divine Land." "Are these strong reinforcements you talk of also warriors at the other shore realm?" Moon asked as he stood up. The other holy being's eyes lit up at this prospect as well. Mike nodded his head in affirmation. "They are stronger than the Yellow Emperor guards in the Divine Land." The strength of the warriors at the other shore realm was another level altogether. Mike was very impressed by the almost invincible duo, Emily and Timotheus. In fact, this piece of information is known to the alliance of the powerful clans. And that was why Nicholas was so anxious to go to the Abyss Demon region. "Unfortunately, he has been replaced by Samuel," Mike continued. "I see." Back then, Moon had been rather confused when the alliance of the powerful clans had rushed into the Abyss Demon region. But now, he was finally seeing why. He asked, "But how can you be so sure that they will protect us?" "Because they are 9 Li guards, people of our 9 Li race," Lorena said. She had been standing quietly behind Mike listening to the entire exchange. "That's great. We can leave the Divine Land with our people right now. When the warriors at the other shore realm break the space barrier of the Divine Land, we can return," Vanessa said happily. Mike shook his head and said, "No, we have something more important to do in the Divine Land." "What is that?" Moon asked apprehensively. "Let my son enter the mountain of holy beings," answered Mike. The holy beings exchanged stunned looks with one another. "Mike, you have got to be kidding me. Zen is in no hurry to become a holy being. Then why the rush? And even if he does become a holy being, he can't change anything, right?" The crowd couldn't fathom Mike's plan of action. It was meaningless to have one more holy being. Plus it was a huge risk to go into the mountain of holy beings right now. But Holy J knew the reason behind Mike's seemingly foolish decision. He also knew what it meant for the mountain of holy beings to come in advance. "This matter is very important to me and Zen," Mike answered flatly. "So when the mountain of holy beings opens 2 months later, I hope you can help me. The mountain of holy beings is located on the side of the Time Sea. At that time, I'm afraid that the security from the alliance of the powerful clans will be heavier. If the Yellow Emperor guards were to stop him from entering the mountain, it would put him in a tough spot," said Moon, trying to make Mike see reason. He really couldn't understand why Zen had to enter the mountain of holy beings. Holy J said with a small smile, "It seems that I have to go to the Soul Wilderness because we need Estelle's help. It's a pity that Bromley hasn't returned. When he does, things will be much easier." While the holy beings were discussing among themselves, a strong wave of energy suddenly swept across from the training tower. Bang! There was an explosion and then a huge hole appeared in the tower. The holy beings turned around to look at the source of the deafening sound and the violent energy. Chapter 2485, The Difficulty of Blending the Godly Ways. Blending the godly ways was an extremely difficult task. Previously, Zen had had to put a lot of effort into blending 300 godly ways. Naturally, blending 3,000 godly ways would be a lot more difficult to achieve. The way's blending energy would spin out of his control if he failed to blend even one of the 3,000 godly ways. When that happened, the way's blending energy would go wild, ready to explode at any moment. Such explosions had occurred many times in Zen's inner world. That was why Zen always chose to do this task in the waters at the edge of his inner world. Even so, the aftermath of the explosions had still affected the surrounding continents. Now, Zen was trying to blend about 2,500 godly ways, which was the largest number of godly ways he had worked with until now. However, the way's blending energy soon began to go wild. As time went by, it became more and more unstable. If it exploded, half of his inner world would be destroyed. Not wanting to risk it, Zen forcefully pulled the way's blending energy out of his inner world. The power of the explosion outside shocked Zen. His master had spent a lot of time and effort building this training tower. Such places where the time flow rate could be permanently changed were very rare, even in the divine land. Unfortunately, the explosion of Zen's ways blending energy destroyed the walls of the tower in the blink of an eye. Boom! Colorful shards began to pop up around the hole caused by the explosion. These colorful shards were actually fragments of time. Now that the walls of the tower had been smashed, exposing the tower to the outside world, time in the training tower was once again passing at the same speed as time in the outside world. These fragments of time were the residue of that change. What kind of energy is that? Is he blending several godly ways? Moon asked with a look of surprise on his face. During the explosion, he had clearly felt the internal momentum of some godly ways, but he had been unable to identify which godly ways they were. It wasn't the first time he was seeing a warrior cultivate multiple godly ways. Some members of the Moon clan cultivated multiple godly ways, including Moon himself. However, he hadn't spent much time blending them. For one thing, blending the godly ways was a very troublesome task. Besides, it would do nothing to improve his strength. He had always thought that the best course of action was to concentrate on mastering one specific godly way. Depends on what you mean by several. Although I don't know the exact number, I gather that Zen blended over 1,000 godly ways, said Mike with a proud smile on his face. Over 1,000? For a moment, Moon was dumbfounded. Then, he asked in an incredulous tone, did you just say that Zen has mastered over 1,000 godly ways? And he even managed to blend them? Generally speaking, a true god could master 5 or 6 godly ways at most, and even that was rare. Only the elites of the large clans on the floating islands would even choose to undertake such an arduous task. It was almost impossible to see a warrior who had mastered more than 8 godly ways across the entire divine land. In fact, as far as Moon could remember, there had once been a consummate true god from a floating island who had grasped 16 godly ways. But even he hadn't been able to blend all of them. Therefore, it was, no doubt, a shock to hear that Zen had not only grasped over 1,000 godly ways, but had even tried to blend them. You must be joking, Mike. The godly ways are very complicated, and the internal momentum of some godly ways restricts the internal momentum of the others. That's why it's very tough to blend even 2 or 3 godly ways, let alone over 1,000. Zen is only over 100 years old, so he couldn't have had the time to comprehend so many godly ways, Woodruff said, laughing. He obviously didn't believe Mike's words. However, Mike replied seriously, I'm not kidding. In fact, my son hasn't only mastered 1,000 godly ways, he has mastered all 3,000 of them. It's just that he hasn't been able to successfully blend many of them yet. Seeing that Mike was being serious, the other holy beings couldn't help but gasp in shock. No wonder this young boy was able to kill Nicholas, said Vanessa. Sitting cross-legged, she stared at Zen from a distance with a trace of fascination on her face. Zen had mastered hundreds of godly ways when he had been on the floating island. Then, after observing Chiyu's shadow in the Divine Time Temple, he had comprehended how to blend godly ways. Woodruff, who had also been present back then, hadn't been able to understand it at all. Anyway, Moon, Woodruff, and the others were unanimously sure of one thing. There was nobody else in the divine land who had comprehended all 3,000 godly ways. There was a long silence before Moon said slowly, the 3,000 godly ways are the basis of the divine land. What will happen if Zen manages to merge all of them? The cultivation of the aboriginals in the divine land relied completely on the godly way tablets, so it was not an exaggeration to say that the godly ways were the basis of the divine land. A mysterious smile appeared on Mike's face. Well, we still have to wait until the merging is finished. No one knows what will happen. Although Mike trusted the members of the Moon clan, some secrets, such as the existence of the Infinity Ruler, were of so much significance that he could not reveal them to anyone. Besides, Mike himself wasn't completely sure about what would happen after the 3,000 godly ways were merged. It was uncharted territory. Zen's failure had destroyed only the second floor of the training tower, and the third floor remained unaffected. The day that the mountain of holy beings would open was getting closer and closer. Before that, Zen wanted to try his best to merge the godly ways. He wasn't sure whether he would be able to fully merge the 3,000 godly ways in time, but he did know that the more godly ways he merged, the more powerful his ways blending energy would be. So, after checking the damage that he had caused, Zen wasted no time and directly went to the third floor of the training tower. In a huge cloud far away from the divine land, 3 huge blood runes appeared around the chaos-winged beast. The blood runes sped up and closely chased the chaos-winged beast no matter how fast it moved in an attempt to escape. On the flying ship behind the chaos-winged beast stood Clement, holding a large bell in his hand. He suddenly hit the bell hard, and the blood runes circled once in the air before shooting 3 blood arrows at the same time. Puff! Although the blood arrows looked ordinary, they were extremely powerful. They directly pierced through the body of the chaos-winged beast, leaving 6 small holes in its body. Bang! He hit the bell once again, and another 3 blood arrows shot out. The chaos-winged beast immediately howled in pain. As the sharp sound rang throughout the area, the Yellow Emperor guards watched with joy on their faces. You did it, Master Clement. After so many years, you finally managed to subdue this beast. Congratulations. This is a huge credit. They all praised Clement, beaming with excitement. The chaos-winged beast was highly valuable, which was why this group of Yellow Emperor guards had been hunting it for countless years now. It was not until today that they had finally succeeded. While the others were shaking with excitement, Clement casually said, compared to the discovery of the Divine Land, the chaos-winged beast is nothing significant. I never imagined that Chiyu would have built a ship and sent it out of the source world before his death. We didn't know about it for so many years. Chapter 2486, The Sky Guard Pavilion. During the chase of the chaos-winged beast, Hamish's messages reached the flying ship one after another. Clement already had a general understanding of the Divine Land, and he was sensitive to the news. The capture of the chaos-winged beast was a sizable contribution to the bear race, but Clement treated the achievement like it was nothing. If he had known it would take so long to capture the chaos-winged beast, he wouldn't have gotten himself involved in the first place. He was pleasantly surprised to luckily stumble upon the ship when he pursued the chaos-winged beast to the bottom of the chaos. If he managed to bring the Divine Land to the source world, it would be a great honor to him, and he might get rewarded by the Yellow Thirk. Thud! Clement again knocked on the bell in his palm. Swoosh, 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 3 more blood arrows shot out from the blood runes. The chaos-winged beast was familiar with the attacks of the blood runes. It executed a somersault in the air to avoid the 3 blood arrows. However, the attack of the blood runes was not that easy to dodge. Puff, puff, puff. The body of the chaos-winged beast was riddled with holes, and one of the blood arrows pierced through its neck. Strength all but gone, the beast could no longer lift its head, only flying with its head hanging and a low hiss of breath issuing from its mouth. Its flight speed had drastically slowed down. Evidently, the creature had no more energy left. Well then, I'll leave the rest to you. Clement glanced at the chaos-winged beast indifferently and then put away the bell. Meanwhile, Godfrey remained in communication with the Divine Land. With a flick of his wrist, a Yellow Emperor Magatama appeared in Clement's hand. Compared to Godfrey's, Clement's Yellow Emperor Magatama was much more exquisite. As he activated the Yellow Emperor Magatama, Clement said, I'm Clement. Who's your leader? In the Divine Land, the intermittent sounds suddenly became clear, and Clement's voice finally reached Layton and Hamish. Master Clement, it's Master Clement. Layton's face registered pleased surprise, while Hamish beside him was confused. He had never heard of Clement before then. However, upon seeing how excited Layton was, Hamish surmised that Clement was no ordinary person, so he dared not to ask questions. I'm Layton, a 3-star Yellow Emperor Guard, Layton said as self-introduction. Clement continued, if there aren't powerhouses at the other shore realm in the Divine Land, why do you have to ask for help? In Clement's perspective, Layton and the other Yellow Emperor Guards could have just brought the Divine Land back to the source world secretly to get rewards. After all, the Yellow Emperor Guards also competed with each other fiercely. Since they chose to ask for help, they must have come across some trouble. Clement was a very cautious person. Although he was confident in his own power, anything could happen in the vast chaos, especially since the Divine Land was built by Chiyu. Although he had been nailed to death, Chiyu could still kill several warriors at the other shore realm in the Divine Land with the ease of killing flies if he so desired. Clement wouldn't deliberately put himself in harm's way. Layton instantly understood what Clement meant. He said, at first, we didn't need your help. However, another group of warriors at the other shore realm suddenly appeared outside the Divine Land. There was a 5-star 9 guard among them. A 5-star 9 guard? Clement asked, an eyebrow slightly raised. Star rating was only a title, and no one knew when it became popular. The bear race had the Yellow Emperor Guards, and the 9 race had the 9 Guards. The number of stars was nothing more than a reflection of one's contribution to the race. However, a 9 guard who could achieve 5 stars was undoubtedly powerful. How many people are there? Clement continued with his questions. About a dozen people, Layton responded with alacrity. Word of mouth is, some of them belong to the snake goddess race. Clement nodded. It didn't matter which race they belonged to, he could kill all of them if he wanted to. Layton was worried that Clement would refuse to help, so he said urgently, Master Clement, those warriors at the other shore realm are no match for you. If you go there, you can easily kill them. I see, I will track your positions, Clement said. The light on his yellow Emperor Magatama disappeared. Godfrey asked, are we going to the Divine Land? With hands clasped behind his back, Clement narrowed his eyes and said, it may be difficult for me to deal with those extremely powerful 5-star 9 Li guards. However, the elite troops of the 9 Li race had been killed in Guilt Town, so those wandering outside the source world are most likely not the core figures. Let's go. As he spoke, the chaos-winged beast in front of the flying ship suddenly erupted with a terrifying aura before it died. The group of Yellow Emperor guards tasked to kill the dying chaos-winged beast did succeed, but they didn't expect that its ultimate counterattack before death would be so brutal. The originally shriveled, flat pairs of wings suddenly swelled. The chaos-winged beast was intelligent. It knew that it wouldn't survive, so it chose to take the Yellow Emperor guards with it to their death. The Yellow Emperor guards revealed a trace of panic on their faces, and each one of them wanted to retreat. Upon seeing this scene, Clement jumped up with a calm face, a golden light nestling in his hand. I have chased you for so long. Now I can end your life with my own hands. The golden light transformed into a sharp, golden sword, which Clement used to sever the head of the chaos-winged beast. The latter was already gasping for its final breath. How could it possibly resist Clement's attack? The sword readily pierced through the creature's swollen body, and a huge wound spread from its back to its head. Finally, it was dead. In the Divine Land, Layton's face registered a tinge of unabashed joy. Layton, is Master Clement very strong? Is he a 5-star Yellow Emperor guard? Awash with curiosity, Hamish started quizzing Layton. Layton slightly smiled. You know what, he was already a 5-star Yellow Emperor guard when we left. Not only that, he's a member of the Sky Guard Pavilion. Thankfully, I can rely on such a personality to help me out in times of crisis. Upon hearing the name of the Sky Guard Pavilion, Hamish was slightly shocked. With the large population of the bear race, its members could not easily join the Yellow Emperor Guards, let alone the Sky Guard Pavilion. Thus, Hamish admired every member of the Sky Guard Pavilion. No wonder Layton respected Clement so much. Your mission has been completed. Now, you can join Samuel and drive out the mice from the Forbidden Land with Selim and Lorcan, Layton said with a faint smile. Everything had been settled, so Layton had nothing to worry about. The only thing that required constant vigilance on his part was the original will of the Divine Land. Chapter 2487, Mountain Power. The Forbidden Lands, which were the domains defined by the Creator, were considered almost sacred and inviolable in the eyes of the people dwelling in the Divine Land. These lands remained indestructible. However, in the eyes of the Yellow Emperor Guards, other than the Mountain of Holy Beings and the ruling slate, they could handle everything else with their bare strength alone. Harold had destroyed the transmission arrays connecting other places and the Everest Spirit Mountain in advance. After receiving Layton's order, Samuel led the holy beings of the powerful clans to the Everest Spirit Mountain. Of course, his group included Hamish, Selim, and Lorcan. The holy beings of the powerful clans seemed to hold a slight indifference in this whole affair. Primarily, they didn't want and never aspired to work for them. But when they joined the alliance, they were left with no choice but to reluctantly go with them as if it was part of their allegiance. Equipped with such confidence, the 3 Yellow Emperor Guards and the holy beings found themselves at their mapped-out destination half a day later. It was the region where the Everest Spirit Mountain rested. This Forbidden Land was not as large as the Abyss Demon region, as it only occupied half of the area of the region. Standing on a barren mountain, the group unknowingly focused their gazes towards a light-enchanted barrier. The space covered by that magical barrier belonged to the Everest Spirit Mountain. Even if we destroy the Everest Spirit Mountain, Harold wouldn't be waiting for us there. He will leave, and there is a chance that he would flee to the Swirl Forest, Samuel claimed in a tone full of certainty. The other holy beings did not speak or react even though they heard his words distinctly. They kept a stiff upper lip. Murphy and Clark also kept silent, giving off an impassive stance. It looked like they were all still not entirely convinced. The Yellow Emperor Guards might feel that everything went smoothly at this moment, because to win them, they imparted to them the truth of dark and light chaos. But, it seemed that they fell short in their expectation, and they still needed to work harder to gain their full support. For instance, the members of the former alliance of the powerful clans, like Murphy, had a real good relationship with Nicholas. How could they submit to their enemy Samuel? Likewise, other powerful clans held so much resentment in their hearts as they were forced to join the alliance. And there was no room for refusal. It doesn't matter. There are not many forbidden lands for them to hide. If we can destroy the Everest Spirit Mountain, we'll continue to head for the Swirl Forest, countered Hamish, reassuringly, after a moment of reflection. He seemed in a daze, but he was sharply looking at the enchanted barrier. Previously, the Yellow Emperor guards had suffered a lot when they pinned their hopes on the sea-cracking skull in the ruling slate. But now, after they contacted Clement, they had a sudden boost of confidence generously bursting from within. And killing the people in the Forbidden Lands was no more than a casual task. "Come on, everyone," Hamish ordered, gesturing with a flick of his hand. His words didn't fall on deaf ears, after all. Under the command of the Yellow Emperor guards, many holy beings began to attack the Everest Spirit Mountain in unison. Even though they did not try their best, they were able to cause destructive damage with a wave of their hands at the very least. The ripples of internal momentum spread from the light-enchanted barrier that separated the Everest Spirit Mountain from the Divine Land. The tremendous vibration reverberated incessantly. While Samuel's group was demon-bent on creating destruction, on the top of the Everest Spirit Mountain, there seemed to have a sense of stillness. Harold, who was dressed in his favorite white, was found to be sitting cross-legged, basking in tranquility. He was savoring this moment down to the core, because ever since Mike returned, the burden on his shoulders was lifted, and he felt so much relaxed. But it didn't take long before troubles came, and he was getting an eyeful of it. "They really launch an attack," Harold mumbled, watching the north of the Everest Spirit Mountain. He could feel it deep down the moment the Everest Spirit Mountain was attacked because he had integrated with the mountain. At this juncture, a huge roar came, followed by a strong sense of vibration, like an earthquake. "What's going on, Harold?" And as if on cue, Marsh on the other side of the mountaintop was seen flying towards Harold, wearing a grim face. He couldn't believe his eyes with what he witnessed. The Forbidden Lands were known to be almost indestructible. But now, with such resounding loud noises produced, something grave indeed happened. The Moon Clan was situated very close to the Swirl Forest. They had chosen this place after their departure from the floating island, while the Sword Clan decided to opt for the Everest Spirit Mountain. "Some people are attacking the Everest Spirit Mountain," Harold sternly replied. Marsh, who looked bewildered at the sudden turn of event, seemed to have something to come to his mind. Then he thoughtfully asked, "The Yellow Emperor guards?" "They haven't made a move yet," countered Harold, beaming a smile. Crossing his arms on his chest, he went on, "It's those holy beings who are attacking." "Then what should we do?" Marsh casually asked, frowning. His face was etched with worry. "Get out of here," retorted Harold, curtly. Harold then recalled that previously, Mike had ordered him to develop a transmission array that led to the Swirl Forest. So no matter which place was assaulted, they would immediately give up that place to flee to the other. Soon after he finished talking, he flashed and quickly disappeared. And at the next moment, he appeared on the edge of the Everest Spirit Mountain. The sight of numerous holy beings of the powerful clans incessantly wreaking havoc by attacking the enchanted barrier of the Everest Spirit Mountain unfolded before him. When they sensed Harold's oppressive presence, they immediately stopped. Glancing at Harold, Samuel spoke disdainfully, "Your strength is not powerful enough to fight against us. If you choose to surrender, I can persuade Master Hamish to spare most of you. Right now, it's indeed hard to fight against you, but who knows what will happen in the future?" Harold calmly pointed out. Whoosh! With his body sticking to the light-enchanted barrier, Samuel threatened coldly, "But you have no future. It won't be long before all of you die." Harold also slowly attached himself to the light-enchanted barrier, mimicking Samuel's move as if to taunt him. He stayed very close to Samuel, with his lips slightly open. He uttered something, but Samuel didn't hear a single word of it. "What did you say?" Samuel demanded. The confusion was evident in his face. "I said, you can have a try." Just as the words fell from his lips, he flexed his hand and deliberately threw a solid punch at Samuel. Then his right arm started to swell wildly. And simultaneously, the large Everest Spirit Mountain behind him gradually emitted an infinite luster. It glowed like a moon in an evening sky. Countless cracks subsequently emerged on the surface of the mountain body. And not long after, the strength source that was flowing in every crack directly all gathered on Harold's right arm, shredding the sleeve covering his right arm in the blink of an eye. In the Divine Land, the Everest Spirit Mountain symbolized the legend of power. It was told that there was someone in the remote past who had been moving with the Everest Spirit Mountain on his back. But after arriving in the region where the mountain was located at present, he couldn't go any further and was pressed at the foot of the mountain. As time went by, the mountain absorbed his strength and became the symbol of power in the divine land. In terms of pure combat power, it was very likely that Harold couldn't beat Samuel, because it was extremely tough to use the power of the Everest Spirit Mountain to fight. After taking control of the Abyss Demon region, Samuel didn't take the rulers of the other forbidden lands seriously, as he only ignored them. He didn't think that there would be an unexpected attack from Harold, so he was caught unprepared. Buzz. The light enchanted barrier of the Everest Spirit Mountain had an attribute. It could block everything, but it wouldn't block its ruler. Harold's punch had drawn almost half of the mountain power. Such a massive amount of strength source could mean several dozen times greater than that of a holy being. The second it gathered in Harold's fist, a 100-foot gravitational field was suddenly formed. The space in the gravitational field collapsed toward his fist. Since he was caught off guard and unprepared, Samuel was pulled over by the power. His body clung to the light enchanted barrier in a sorry state. It was too late for Samuel to realize what happened. He had been unable to display the grand teleportation to dodge Harold's punch. And at this crucial moment, he could only pull himself up. Bang! The punch struck him painfully hard in the chest. Although he was a holy being, his body was as fragile as a piece of paper. It was nothing in front of such power. The punch directly smashed his half-body into pieces. Chapter 2488, Attack. Samuel dragged his broken body and hurriedly retreated. His eyes narrowed in hatred. How dare you launch a sneak attack on me? Harold's power was indeed tremendous. However, Samuel was confident that if they ever fought, they would be on par. He was caught off guard, and that was the only reason Harold managed to land a hit. The loss of more than half of the body was nothing to a holy being. Even if Harold had smashed his entire body to pieces, he would still be able to return to the universe and get revived. Still, it was such a great shame for him to be defeated by Harold, and in front of so many people too. Meanwhile, Harold looked on indifferently. He appeared bored and impassive, as he stood behind the light enchanted barrier. Let's fight together and destroy the Everest Spirit Mountain, roared Samuel angrily. Murphy, Clark, and Zeke secretively exchanged glances. There were faint smiles on their faces. They were happy to see what happened, but they didn't want to be too obvious. It could offend the Yellow Emperor guards. Around them, many holy beings were attacking the light enchanted barrier of the Everest Spirit Mountain, but they were not making significant changes. Various attacks bombarded the light enchanted barrier. It didn't seem to do anything, as the barrier only trembled slightly. Harold could sense the state of the entire forbidden land. He watched them indifferently from behind the light enchanted barrier, watched as they kept on attacking with no significant effect. Their attacks were too weak, they wouldn't even shake the foundation of the Everest Spirit Mountain. Before long, Samuel asked Pascal to take action. Up to now, Samuel hadn't figured out the full potential of that ring. Even so, he could not underestimate the ability that it could display. Pascal spread his two black wings, while wisps of black smoke swirled around. It quickly turned into sharp arrows that shot straight towards Harold. Bang, 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 every black arrow hit the light enchanted barrier, but none of them caused much damage. The broken light arrows left minuscule black rings on the light enchanted barrier. On closer inspection, these rings were slowly corroding the barrier. Since the power of the Abyss Demon region could even tear apart the mixed element seal, its power was naturally immense. Harold frowned thoughtfully. When he was connected with the Everest Spirit Mountain, his consciousness integrated with the consciousness of the mountain. Now, he could sense that the black energy had caused damage to the mountain, and this damage was irreversible. If this continued for a long time, the Everest Spirit Mountain would be torn apart sooner or later. We have watched this farce for a long time. Let's move, Hamish said to Salim and Lorcan, who were both standing behind him. They didn't want to waste too much time there. Salim and Lorcan nodded readily at the same time. At last, the three powerful masters at the other shore realm finally decided to move. When Harold saw this, he closed his eyes and sighed lightly. Finally, he turned and disappeared into thin air. A few moments later, he reappeared in the transmission array he had built. Marsh and some other holy beings had arranged for all the members of the Sword Clan and the Luo clan to enter the transmission array. Marsh was waiting beside the transmission array when he arrived. He smiled when he saw Harold and asked, "How is it going?" "It would take some time before they could break through the Everest Spirit Mountain, but it's going faster than I expected," replied Harold. "And even if we enter the Swirl Forest, I'm afraid." Marsh trailed off, worried. He thought that even if they retreated to the Swirl Forest, they still wouldn't be able to defeat the Yellow Emperor guards. "The Master has a plan. Let's get there first, and then we'll discuss this, said Harold with a smile. Without another word, Marsh walked into the transmission array and disappeared. On the other hand, Harold didn't leave immediately. He wanted to buy more time for them, thus he needed to stir more trouble for these people. According to Harold's speculations, even with the powerful strength of the Yellow Emperor guards, it would still take a long time for them to break through the Everest Spirit Mountain. It would be extremely difficult for them to break through a 6th-grade forbidden land within a month. However, the power that Pascal displayed after he took control of the Abyss Demon region was beyond his imagination. That power could easily suppress the enchanted barrier of the Everest Spirit Mountain. As Harold sat beside the transmission array, his thoughts had gone back to the Everest Spirit Mountain. Meanwhile, a slithering sound echoed deep within the Everest Spirit Mountain. It was a huge snake, around 1 million feet long. It slithered out from a huge crack at the bottom of the mountain. It was the Black Wind Snake. It could be found all year round in the Ghost Brook, at the bottom of the Everest Spirit Mountain. It was a dangerous beast in the eyes of the disciples from the powerful clans on the floating islands. Its power was comparable to the powerful beasts in the Abyss Demon region. All these years, Harold fed it enough faith energy so it would grow stronger. He was hoping that it would be useful in critical moments. Only a master of a forbidden land was qualified to distribute the faith energy. This was why, for the past few years, it had been difficult for low-level fierce beasts in the Everest Spirit Mountain to obtain faith energy. Harold distributed most of the faith energy to powerful fierce beasts. Woo-woo-woo, the giant birds that were circling over the Everest Spirit Mountain all descended towards Harold. They circled him, as soldiers that were waiting for orders. These giant birds were called dream birds, and they were powerful. Although they could not fight against holy beings, they were a force to be reckoned with. As soon as Harold pointed at a direction with his finger, they immediately flew towards that direction. In addition to the giant birds, there were also dozens of golden tigers, which were about 1,000 feet high. Highly poisonous black geckos were also present. All kinds of ferocious beasts crawled all over the Everest Spirit Mountain. Even if these beasts were killed, they could still be reborn. Now, it was time to release their power, and Harold would not hold back. 3 days later, a violent vibration shook the Everest Spirit Mountain. The light enchanted barrier of the Everest Spirit Mountain was finally broken. As soon as this transpired, Harold promptly stepped into the transmission array. At the same time, under his control, the fierce beasts of the Everest Spirit Mountain fought with the holy beings and the Yellow Emperor guards. Even the Abyss Demon region failed to resist the holy beings. It was even more difficult, now that there were powerful masters at the other shore realm. The fierce beasts were at a distinct disadvantage. Soon enough, the beasts were torn to pieces and turned into streams of faith energy. When Samuel got injured, he should have returned to the universe. That would have been the fastest way to repair his physical body. However, he let his hatred guide his actions. He dragged his broken body and fought his way into the Everest Spirit Mountain, instead. He took Pascal and bypassed the ferocious beasts. They directly entered the Everest Spirit Mountain. They used the grand teleportation hundreds of times in the Everest Spirit Mountain, but they found nothing. The only thing they found was a destroyed transmission array. Exasperated, Samuel poured his anger out on the Everest Spirit Mountain. However, the Everest Spirit Mountain was so huge that Pascal barely made a dent even he had gone all out. He only managed to create a 1,000,000-foot-long crack. This crack was insignificant compared to the huge Everest Spirit Mountain. After he poured out his anger, he had no choice but to leave with the alliance of powerful clans. "We'll go to the Swirl Forest now. I won't stop until I find out where he's hiding," Samuel said angrily. Hamish dissuaded him, "You'd better go back to the universe and rebuild your body first. You can recover in 1 or 2 days. It's not proper for you to just fly around like this with only half of your body." Chapter 2489, Ask Estelle for Help. The arrival of the people from the Sword Clan and the Luo clan made the Fairy Palace even more crowded. Even Mike hadn't expected the alliance of powerful clans on the floating islands to break through the Everest Spirit Mountain in just 3 days. It meant that the Swirl Forest had become an extremely dangerous place to be in. After a short discussion, the holy beings in the Fairy Palace finally persuaded Mike to let everyone retreat to the outside of the Divine Land. While holy beings could freely enter and exit the Divine Land, the rest of the members of the Luo clan, the Moon clan, and the Sword clan, even consummate true gods like Harold and Augustus, could only hide in the inner worlds of the holy beings. They could break through the Everest Spirit Mountain, but they won't be able to break through my Swirl Forest. It's good at defending against all kinds of attacks. Augustus interjected, dissatisfied with the direction in which the holy being's discussion was going. But before he could finish his words, Hallett hit him on his head, signaling for him to shut up. Even if we retreat, I still have one request, Mike said. We need to get Zen to the mountain of holy beings. They had already discussed this before, and all the other holy beings had ruled that it was unnecessary. However, Mike kept insisting on it. The thing was, getting Zen to the mountain of holy beings was a risky operation. After all, the mountain of holy beings was right next to the time sea. If the Yellow Emperor guards managed to intercept them, they wouldn't have much chance of making it. Mulling over this problem just gave everyone a headache, but Mike refused to back off. Well, you can leave the divine land first. I'll make a trip to the soul wilderness, Holy J said with a bitter smile. Since Bromley is not here, I guess I'll have to be the mediator. The reason why Estelle had been locked up in the fairy palace was because of a relationship with Bromley. It was going to be really difficult to convince Estelle to help. If Bromley were here, it would be a small problem, but they had not seen Bromley for so many years. Well, thank you, Holy J. I believe this will work. Zen was the one who helped Estelle get out of the dungeon. After that, she made a move in the evolutionary universe and helped Zen block the strike from Murphy. She even silenced the divine land once to help Zen. Zen and Estelle have some connection by fate. For this reason, I hope she'll help us, said Mike. Holy J nodded. Although Estelle was willful, she was a sensible woman. She controlled the soul wilderness and enjoyed her life in that remote place. Moreover, she hadn't joined any forces, so it was almost impossible for the alliance of powerful clans on the floating islands to take note of her. For now, Estelle was their best bet. If the Yellow Emperor guards managed to take complete control of the divine land, however, things would change. After all, the soul wilderness was one of the 4 great forbidden lands. After Samuel claimed his status, their choices were limited. They would either have to join the alliance of powerful clans or be killed. There would be no other option. Once the discussion was over, everyone started to take action. The next day, Holy J went to the Death Spirit region alone. With the existence of the Soul Wilderness, the whole Death Spirit region was desolate. In the center of the Death Spirit region was a large mountain range. The mountains were like ghosts that stretched unchecked. In the mountains, there was a stone arch, outside which there was a huge enchanted barrier. There were several transmission arrays that were arranged in this enchanted barrier. However, these transmission arrays had already been destroyed. As soon as Estelle had returned, she had erased the transmission arrays at the entrance of the Soul Wilderness and cut off the way to the floating islands. However, the restrictions around the entrance hadn't been removed. If Holy J were to make a move, it would cost him a lot of time to break the restrictions. Obviously, he didn't have the patience to do all that. Instead, he walked to the enchanted barrier of the Soul Wilderness, reached out his hand, and let a strong soul fluctuation seep into the enchanted barrier. Since Estelle and the Soul Wilderness were connected, she would surely sense his presence. All that was left to see was whether she was willing to come out to help or not. Holy J had no idea what she would choose to do. His friend Bromley was arrogant, but so was Estelle. She was unrelentingly stubborn and could hold a grudge against something for her whole life. There was a good possibility that she would just ignore him completely. Fortunately, his worries turned out to be nothing as a crack appeared in the enchanted barrier of the Soul Wilderness and he received Estelle's invitation. As soon as he stepped into the Soul Wilderness, a gust of cold wind swept toward him. This cold wind contained various kinds of soul power. Ordinary true gods would die in just a few seconds under the pressure of this wind, but it wasn't a problem for Holy J. Wisps of brown aura entwined together and transformed into Estelle's features. Estelle looked at Holy J and asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" "I came here to ask you for help," Holy J said politely. Among Holy J, Bromley, and Mike, Holy J was the one who had the best temper. That was the reason he had taken the initiative to come here. Hearing that, Estelle fell into deep thought. Her thick eyelashes flickered as she asked, "Has Bromley come back?" As Holy J looked at Estelle's expression, his heart skipped a beat. It seemed there was still hope that he could succeed in persuading Estelle to come out. At least she didn't really hate Bromley. He shook his head and said, "If Bromley came back, the first thing he would do is to come here to see you." "Really? Would he dare to come?" Estelle raised her eyebrows and continued, "If he dares to take one step into the Soul Wilderness, I will kill him." Holy J smiled helplessly. He knew that there was no use adding to this topic, so he chose to keep silent. Estelle then asked, "If Bromley hasn't come back, what have you come here for?" "It's because of Zen," said Holy J seriously. You mean that kid? Surprise appeared on Estelle's face. He released me from the dungeon, and I've helped him twice to return the favor. I want you to help him for the third time, Holy J said, cupping his hands. Estelle went silent for a moment. She did not have any ill feelings toward Zen. When she had stayed in the evolutionary universe for a short period of time, she had learned something about the fate that Zen carried. However, after she had helped him in the Time-Sea Forbidden Land, the petal that had been hidden between Zen's eyebrows had disappeared. Estelle had no idea what had happened to him after that. Finally, she asked, "What do you want me to do? Has he rescued Mike?" Noticing the hint of concern in Estelle's voice, Holy J was delighted. Estelle's attitude meant that it would be easy for the conversation to proceed. Since she was not an outsider, Holy J did not want to hide anything from her, so he told her in detail about everything that had happened after Zen had stepped into the Divine Land. When Estelle heard all the unbelievable things that had happened to Zen, she was astonished. 5 minutes later, with a faint smile, she said, "I knew that this guy would make a splash. He was able to confront Nicholas in such a short time. I didn't expect him to be able to do that. Bromley really has an eye for talent." Zen was Bromley's disciple. If Estelle had never had those conflicts with Bromley, she might have become the wife of Zen's master. Yes, Bromley spotted him. And even Mike insisted that Zen become Bromley's disciple. That's why we need your help. On the day that the Mountain of Holy Beings opens, we need everything to go smoothly. We already have the support of a powerful master at the other shore realm, but if we have your support too, we could be sure that nothing will go wrong, Holy J said cautiously. A powerful master at the other shore realm? Who's this person? Estelle asked in surprise. Although she was living here remotely, she knew a lot about what was going on in the Divine Land. And as far as she knew, the only people at the other shore realm who were in the Divine Land right now were the few Yellow Emperor guards. It's someone from the 9 Li race. He has been in seclusion this whole time, but on the day that the Mountain of Holy Beings opens, he will also come out to help us, Holy J said seriously. Chapter 2490, Danger Outside the Divine Land. Holy J told Estelle this because he was afraid that Estelle wouldn't dare to fight the Yellow Emperor guards without strong support. The warrior at the other shore realm from the 9 Li race had been in seclusion for many years and had never appeared in front of anyone. Now, however, since he had been summoned by Lorena, he couldn't refuse. Estelle thought for a moment before saying, "I will help you, but on one condition." "What is that?" Holy J asked. He was prepared to do Estelle almost any favor in exchange for her help. "You must get that man back for me," said Estelle resentfully. At this, a smile appeared on Holy J's face. The man that Estelle was referring to was, of course, none other than Bromley. "If we can successfully get through this crisis, Mike and I will do everything in our power to get Bromley back," Holy J said seriously. With that, they came to an agreement. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Time Sea, a gigantic beast that was 10 million feet tall was in deep slumber. Each fragment of the Time Sea was a slice of the past of the Divine Land. There were, of course, countless slices. Every second that ticked away turned into a fragment that sank into the Time Sea. Many of these fragments were meaningless. For example, a bird flying over the Divine Land was a fragment, and so was a tree that had been broken. But it was fragments of trivial things like these that made up the Time Sea. Therefore, it had once been inferred that time and space could not be separated. However, no one from the Divine Land was able to comprehend this. And it was because of the existence of so many fragments that it had been impossible for Nicholas to find Lorena's body. It had been like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was under all these fragments of time that the enormous ferocious beast slept peacefully. It was none other than the Emperor Resentment, the beast that the sun-blind people were most afraid of. It would wake up occasionally, but most of the time, it slept. As its dozens of huge tentacles swayed with the waves, there was a sharp movement above it. On the head of the Emperor Resentment, a person sat up. There was a unique rune floating in front of him. It was a space rune that could be used in the same way as the Yellow Emperor Magatama of the Yellow Emperor Guards. It allowed the 9 Li people to communicate with one another from a distance. Although it could only transmit voices over a short distance and couldn't be compared to the Yellow Emperor Magatama, it was more than enough to facilitate the communication within the Divine Land. "I'm not a coward. Although I might not be powerful enough, I will not hesitate to sacrifice my life for the 9 Li race. But I don't understand one thing. What makes the Mountain of Holy Beings so important?" The man, whose name was Leaf, murmured to the space rune in front of him. Although he was a powerhouse at the other shore realm, he was much weaker than the 9 Li guards, so he wasn't qualified to join them. "It's my husband's idea," answered Lorena. A trace of helplessness appeared on Leaf's face. In the eyes of the 9 Lee people, Mike didn't deserve Lorena. However, it was not Leaf's place to comment on such things. He had no choice but to agree to Lorena's request. "I will wake up the Emperor resentment and send it out of the time sea." Previously, he had to flee when facing Hamish. Now that he was going to face other Yellow Emperor guards, who were even stronger than Hamish, he knew that he would not stand a chance, but he could not disobey Lorena's request either. In just one day, the fairy palace became empty. Everyone left resolutely this time, even Saul. Moon, Marsh, Augustus, Mike, Harold, and Zen were left to guard the swirl forest. In the open space of the forest, the internal momentum of the evolution godly wave formed a huge star plate. Mike stood inside the star plate while Harold stood on the other side. There were countless snow-white stars circling within the plate. Their trajectory seemed to be chaotic and disorderly, but in fact, they indicated the fate of the evolution. Even though Harold and Zen had reached the consummation of the evolution godly way, they still found it difficult to interpret the movement of the stars when they saw them rapidly flashing past. The evolution godly way was, in itself, an unpredictable godly way. The speed at which the stars flew was too fast, leaving them no time to study them. A glint flashed in Mike's eyes as he firmly stared at the star plate without blinking for fear of missing even a single detail. 14 bright stars lie in the Self Palace. The money god star goes downward, the sheep star and the camel star move right. The star plate could be used to foretell small events, but this time, Mike needed to foretell the fate of the entire Divine Land. Since the strong Yellow Emperor guards and the powerhouses outside the Divine Land were also involved, there were too many variables, so it was a hard task for him. Buzz. The star plate started to vibrate, and all the stars began to move 10 times faster than before. With his eyes wide open, Mike stared closely at the trajectory of the stars. Finally, the stars were moving at such a rapid speed that the star plate could not withhold them and shattered with a loud bang. By this time, Mike and Harold were both sweating profusely. "What did you see, Master?" Harold asked. "Danger is imminent." Mike frowned. "Who will be in danger?" Harold asked, raising his eyebrow. Mike looked at Zen with a strange expression and said, "It's not Zen. It seems that the danger comes from outside the Divine Land. It's strange." As far as everyone was concerned, the most dangerous thing right now was undoubtedly Zen's entering the Mountain of Holy Beings. Surprisingly, this was not the result that Mike had predicted. Instead, it seemed that something bad was about to happen outside the Divine Land. Lorena had already taken the others to seek the protection of the powerful warriors at the other shore realm, so how could they be in any danger there? The result had completely blindsided Mike and his group. "I may have made a mistake since there are too many factors involved," Mike offered helplessly by way of explanation. If he had used the evolution godly way to predict the fate of the evolutionary universe, he would have gotten accurate results because almost all of the factors were under his control. In the Divine Land, however, many variables were out of his hand, so he wasn't able to arrive at an accurate prediction. Nevertheless, he had wanted to give it a try since Zen was about to enter the Mountain of Holy Beings. He didn't fully believe what he had seen, but he still had a hint of worry on his face. "Don't worry, Father. Emily and Timotheus both have extraordinary strength. They can protect my mother," Zen said comfortingly. Mike nodded. "Of course." Just then, Augustus' face lit up in surprise. "These Yellow Emperor guards are quick. They have destroyed the Everest Spirit Mountain in less than 3 days and now, they're coming for us." Upon hearing this news, everyone continued to look calm. After all, this was something that they had already predicted. Chapter 2491, The Preparation. Before the swirl forest was being invaded, Mike led the others away to safety. For their sakes, he led them into the evolutionary universe. Harold and Augustus stayed within the evolutionary universe, while Zen, Marsh, Moon, and Mike arrived at the outside of the Divine Land. Even with Mike's prediction that danger came from outside the Divine Land, it was the safest place before the Mountain of Holy Beings was opened. At the very least, the Yellow Emperor guards wouldn't dare to leave the Divine Land to hunt them. This pleased Timotheus and Emily. After all, they had instructed Mike to let Lorena and Zen stay with them during their last meeting. A few days later, Samuel managed to finally break the swirl forest's restriction. However, this was the exact situation at the Everest Spirit Mountain all over again. Not a single person in the forest remained except for numerous fierce creatures. This enraged Samuel so much that he soon began to destroy the entire fairy palace. "I've told you that they definitely would escape in advance due to the strength of their reinforcements," Hamish reminded. With disappointment twisting his features, Samuel stated, "They may have escaped to the outside of the divine land, but they can't take the universes with them. I'll change the rules of the ruling slate and destroy Mike's evolutionary universe." Countless universes hovered above the divine land. Everyone was prohibited from going against any of them unless they wished to receive a severe punishment from the ruling slate. The ruling slate divided its rules into different levels with some rules added by the divine land's powerful warriors. However, the rules which governed the universes existed since the ruling slate's inception was set up by none other than Chiyu. To remove these rules was quite challenging. Even when Nicholas changed a single word in the rule regarding the universe wars, it cost him a lot of divine might coins. If Samuel wished to eliminate that rule, then he'd have to sacrifice a hefty portion of his divine might coins. Following Nicholas's death, the Han clan forced the floating island's other powerful clans to surrender their divine might coins. Left with no choice, the powerful clans forced their respective first-tier and second-tier clans to hand in their coins. It was safe to say that the Han clan had robbed majority of the entire divine land. Luckily, Samuel indeed had enough divine might coins to shut out that rule. Hearing Samuel's words, the other holy beings looked confused. It was these same rules on the ruling slate that somewhat hindered the holy beings from fighting each other to the death. If Samuel managed to eliminate this rule, then the holy beings would be free to kill each other, leading to the divine land's downfall. Don't even think about it. Those divine might coins your Han clan looted belong to Layton, Hamish warned coldly. They're just holy beings. It's not a big problem for them to have fled. They're not worth these divine might coins. They were still afraid of what would happen next in spite of Hamish being able to find strong reinforcements through the Yellow Emperor Magatama. For example, the 9 Lee guards might break through the space barrier and enter the divine land ahead of time. Layton's sea-cracking skull was ready for combat. With extra protection from the ruling slate's rules, their chances of winning increased. How could he allow Samuel to waste the divine might coins on some holy beings? Seeing Samuel still unconvinced, Hamish patted him on the shoulder and said, "All right. Layton has prepared everything. No one, including the other Shore Realm warriors, can leave alive." Samuel raised his eyebrows upon hearing these words. He fully knew that those Yellow Emperor guards were terrified of people from beyond the divine land. To make up for it, they invested their time into various plans such as letting the sea-cracking skull consume blood, establishing an alliance with powerful clans, and creating new rules on the ruling slate. But now, Samuel felt weird about Hamish's sudden confidence. He asked, "Has Layton already come up with a plan against them?" "What is it?" Hamish nodded with a smile. "Don't ask too many questions. There's nothing to fear. It won't be long." His reply calmed Samuel down. He had intended to attack and occupy Soul Wilderness as well, but then he gave up on the idea. 2 months passed quickly. During these days, more demi-holy beings and consummate true gods went to the Mountain of Holy Beings. The Mountain of Holy Beings will open in 3 days. It appears the rumor is true. The floating islands have yet to take action. In that case, our chances of becoming holy beings have risen. The consummate true gods and the demi-holy beings chatted while observing the Mountain of Holy Beings. Although they got along with each other now, they would become rivals after entering the Mountain of Holy Beings. Previously, many good friends, even brothers, had fought for the chance to become a holy being. At that moment, a few black dots flew over from not too far away. "I see the consummate true god of the Bai clan. Here they come. Who says the wealthy clans won't fight for the chance to become holy beings? There are fewer people this time." The flying black dots quickly approached and then landed on the other side. Most of the consummate true gods and demi-holy beings of the alliance of wealthy clans led by Nicholas were slaughtered in the Abyss Demon region. Only those who stayed on the floating islands survived, which was why only a few people from the wealthy clans were present. The consummate true gods and demi-holy beings normally portrayed quite dominant auras. Now, their silence and the sullen look plastered on their faces were a far cry from it. Those coming from the powerful clans received the same order. Apart from scrambling for the holy being positions, they had another goal, to kill Roche and Zen. During the battle in the Abyss Demon region, news regarding Roche and Zen came from holy beings who returned alive. The pair were stronger than demi-holy beings and could even fight against a holy being. Any consummate true god or demi-holy being that crossed paths with them would be asking for death. However, even their clans, holy beings, didn't dare to disobey Samuel's order. How could they? This left them feeling depressed. However, the holy beings of their respective clans also informed them that the alliance of powerful clans was conjuring up a plan to stop the pair from reaching the Mountain of Holy Beings. If they succeeded, then there would be nothing to worry about anymore. These 3 days seemed calm. In secret, however, all sorts of forces were quietly observing undetected. In the Time Sea, Leaf had already awakened the Emperor resentment. 1,000 miles north of the Time Sea, Estelle and Holy J lurked deep within the mountains. Outside the Divine Land, Emily brought Zen, Roche and Sword Chen to the area of sky that hovered above the Divine Land's center. Of course, Mike and the other holy beings were there as well. All of them were prepared. Once the mountain of holy beings opened, Holy J, who was observing the mountain, would inform Mike immediately. Emily outstretched her arm and pointed her finger. Out of it burst the truth of void destruction. A wide, fluctuating circle began to gently envelop the surface of the Divine Land. While she could make a space channel with ease, it was unfortunately blocked by a barrier that prevented her from passing through. Chapter 2492, A Fierce Battle Before the Gate. Holy J stood at the mountain peak, his eyes shifting as he looked around the vast expanse surrounding him. He could see every single detail. Even a tiny change taking place 1,000 miles away didn't escape his attention. The silver light on the surface of the mountain of holy beings intensified. It looked like silver being melted and poured on it from above. And then, from deep within the mountain, came the sure effects of vibrations taking hold. A huge gate, about 1,000 feet tall, appeared at the foot of the mountain of holy beings. The appearance of the gate sent the demi-holy beings and the consummate true gods into an excited tizzy. The gate is open, hurry up, I'd better be the first to enter. Run. The moment people began scrambling towards the gate, a flame suddenly appeared before it. The flame bloomed and turned into a fiery snake 1,000 feet high, floating in front of the gate. A demi-holy being rushed to the front, determined to get to the top this time. Since the fire snake had not yet filled the entire gate, he activated the grand teleportation and tried to rush in. But he was too late. He had barely reached the gate when the fire snake managed to block every last corner, showering him with its fire. The demi-holy being didn't have the chance to struggle or scream before he was burned to ashes and scattered in the wind. What kind of fire is this? Why did it stop us from entering the mountain of holy beings? Everyone was stunned. The power contained in the fire was far beyond their imagination. Even Clark, who was the most proficient person of the elementary fire godly way, was unable to deal with the fire. Don't panic. We'll let you in when the time is right. But don't you dare try and break through the gate. If you do, you will end up just like him. Don't blame me for not warning you. Hamish sneered, standing before the door. All the demi-holy beings and the consummate true gods floated in the air in a daze, at a loss what to do. He is the other shore realm warrior that stands behind the Han clan, an insider whispered. A master like him is much stronger than a holy being. I don't know why he is blocking the gate. Is he going to stop us from becoming holy beings? Depression had caught hold of everyone, but they didn't dare say anything after learning of this person's cultivation base. They could only obey him and refrain from doing anything. 1,000 miles away, Holy J frowned as he saw this. Even though they had predicted that enemies would stop Zen from entering the gate, it was indeed troublesome that a yellow emperor guard was standing firmly at the entrance of the mountain of holy beings. At this moment, a sudden ripple of movements appeared at the northern end of the Time Sea. A loud noise like a bang sounded as the surface of the sea beside the north shore descended, as if a gigantic beast had opened its mouth to swallow the sea water. When the sea level had reached a certain level, it stopped and began to rise rapidly again. Splash! The colorful sea water poured out of the Time Sea, turning into a tsunami that was 100,000 feet high. The demi-holy beings and consummate true gods were not ignorant, but they were still stunned at what they saw. Only holy beings could deal with the sea water of the Time Sea. Even if a demi-holy being were to as much as touch it, they would die in an instant. What is behind the tsunami? It is the Emperor resentment. The monster in the Time Sea, the Emperor resentment. Run, our bodies will be torn to shreds if the water of the Time Sea touches us. These people were even more depressed. The few months of wait had everyone itching to rush into the mountain of holy beings. But now, a strong man at the other shore realm was blocking their way. And then this huge tsunami was emerging from the Time Sea. What was happening? But since the tsunami was no more than 100,000 feet high, they had the chance to escape since they could easily move higher than that using the grand teleportation. Everyone moved away from the approaching tsunami using the grand teleportation. Hamish stood before the huge gate, his expression unchanging as he watched the tsunami coming towards him. The water of the Time Sea couldn't tear a holy being apart, let alone him. Hamish was surprised to see a man standing on the Emperor resentment, who was another shore realm warrior. I didn't expect a member of the 9 Li race to have been hiding in Time Sea. Xavier, it's time for you to fight. Hamish was a bit surprised. He had barely finished talking when the sea water of the Time Sea submerged him, along with a small part of the Mountain of Holy Beings. But the water couldn't tear Hamish apart, nor could it affect the silver light on the mountain's surface. Space fluctuated as Xavier's brazen laughter reverberated through it. I wonder who the nameless 9 Li rat is. Fight me. Saying thus, Xavier turned into an arrow and shot towards the Emperor Resentment. Woo! The Emperor Resentment let out a low growl. It lifted its tentacles and tried to grab Xavier. Leaf stood on the Emperor Resentment's head, a bronze dagger axe in his hand. He had been in hiding for so many years that Lorena's call had filled him with daring. He had no intention of returning alive. Xavier was incredibly fast. Although the Emperor Resentment's tentacles were flexible, they couldn't wrap themselves around him. He was standing before Leaf in the blink of an eye. The bronze dagger axe in Leaf's hand began to boil. He had been hiding in seclusion in the Time Sea for so many years that his strength had grown immensely during this time. He made good use of this strength as he headed for Xavier, brandishing the bronze dagger axe. The Emperor Resentment, on the other hand, tried its best to attack Hamish and drive him away from the gate. Although Hamish was the weakest of the Yellow Emperor guards, his strength could not be ignored. You beast, you are courting death. With a push of Hamish's hands, circles of blazing fire rings spread out around him. Sizz. The Emperor Resentment's skin was rough and thick, but the fire rings managed to scorch its tentacles. Woo, woo. The Emperor Resentment let out a groan of pain and opened its big mouth, revealing its sharp teeth. The beast roared and shot a thick, large poisonous blood arrow from its mouth towards Hamish. The arrow covered the entire gate, and if Hamish wanted to avoid it, he would have to leave his post at the gate. Hamish, however, didn't budge. The poison blood arrow was only 10 feet away when Salim's figure appeared beside him. Defense, Salim said. An oval-shaped ball of light shrouded Hamish and Salim. This was the Thurgy that came from the truth of holy words, which Salim was proficient in. The light ball easily blocked the poison blood arrow. 1,000 miles away, the tsunami caused by the Emperor Resentment had destroyed many villages along the way, including a small divine city. Except for a few top-rank true gods, the others were all torn to pieces, falling into the cracks of time. Holy J and Estelle floated in the air. He looked very worried. Hamish was guarding the gate at all times, making it difficult for Holy J to find a way to send Zen in. Chapter 2493, A Fleeting Chance. An orange scepter appeared in Estelle's hand. She gently said, "Do I need to take action?" "Wait," Holy J said as he looked ahead. He had only one chance. Naturally, his judgment was crucial. On the top of the divine land. Mike pulled a long face. Holy J told Mike what he saw. According to their originally planned schedule, they would get the best opportunity when Leaf took action. However, the Yellow Emperor guards seemed to be more prepared than expected. "What's wrong?" Zen asked as he stared at his father. "Hamish is still blocking the gate of the Mountain of Holy Beings," said Mike, frowning. Zen thought for a moment and said, "I can head down there first." Hamish's flames might be extremely terrifying, but Zen thought he could withstand them. As long as he got into the Mountain of Holy Beings, everything would be fine. Mike shook his head and said, "It's not just Hamish who is blocking the gate, another Yellow Emperor guard is also stationed there." "It's impossible to find a perfect chance," Zen said earnestly. "This scene is exactly what we have predicted in our original plan. Besides, we still have Estelle." Zen also knew that although his father intended to send him to the Mountain of Holy Beings, he was still worried about him. However, they had no other choice but to risk storming into the Mountain of Holy Beings. The perfect opportunity to do so was fleeting, so they could only take so many risks. Mike didn't say anything because he believed in Holy J's judgment. At the foot of the Mountain of Holy Beings, after its poisoned blood arrow was blocked by Salim, the Emperor Resentment stretched out its thick tentacles again towards the two other Shore Realm warriors. Its body also rushed toward them. Seeing this, Salim said with a laugh, "This beast is stupid." As he spoke, he once again unleashed the truth of holy words. This time, he uttered two words, "Sword strike." The invisible giant swords rotating at a high speed materialized in front of Salim. The Emperor Resentment's tentacles and body were cut into pieces by the giant swords. Blood splashed like rain with mangled flesh flying everywhere. Woo, woo, woo. The Emperor Resentment became mad with rage and it hurled itself with all its might against the swords. The power of the colossal creature was terrifying. Salim's Thurgy was extremely remarkable, but the flesh that those swords severed from the Emperor Resentment was like nothing. Although the Emperor Resentment felt a sharp pain, it did not die. Boom! Finally, the Emperor Resentment's huge body hit the oval-shaped light ball which pressed against the mountain of holy beings. The light ball was extremely strong, but its defensive power was limited. The oval-shaped light ball made a sizzling sound while being squeezed between the Emperor Resentment and the mountain of holy beings. Small cracks began to appear on its surface. When Hamish suddenly saw the cracks, a worried look appeared on his face. He was not afraid of this monster, but he had to admit that the Emperor Resentment was still too powerful. Given enough time to challenge the Emperor Resentment, he would be able to kill it in his unharmed state. No matter how powerful the Emperor Resentment was, it was hard for it to give play to its strength. However, they had to guard the mountain of holy beings now. If the light ball was broken, they would probably be crushed by the Emperor Resentment. "Can you stand it?" Hamish asked worriedly. Salim smiled bitterly. "I can't bear it, I'm about to." Then his expression changed and he shouted, "Go!" Crack! The ball of light shattered, and the large body of the Emperor Resentment hurtled toward them. The two powerful other Shore Realm warriors reacted quickly. They employed the grand teleportation technique to escape the instant the light ball broke into pieces. Crash! The Emperor Resentment's huge body slammed against the side of the mountain of holy beings. The mountain of holy beings was so solid that the other Shore Realm warriors could not shake it. Although the body of the Emperor Resentment was about as large as the mountain of holy beings did not budge an inch under such massive impact. "They have finally left. Now's our chance." Overjoyed at this scene, Holy J immediately sent a message to Mike, who was currently outside the Divine Land. When Mike informed Emily, the truth of void destruction shot downwards from Emily's fingertip. Buzz! A space channel materialized, penetrating the outer layer of the Divine Land at a high speed, passing through a holy being's universe, and accurately ending up about 100 feet away from the gate of the mountain of holy beings. The location and distance of the space channel had been carefully calculated and prepared beforehand, ensuring its accuracy. "Go!" Zen jumped into the space channel without hesitation. Roche and Sword Chen followed closely behind. Instantaneously, the three of them disappeared into the space channel. Just as Hamish and Salim were escaping using the grand teleportation technique, a space channel descended. Their expressions changed dramatically. "It's a space channel. It is the channel formed by the truth of void destruction. The warriors outside the Divine Land are making their move." Layden ordered Hamish and Salim to guard the gate of the mountain of holy beings and never abandon their posts. With the recent attack by the monster, they had to get out of the way. They didn't expect the warriors from outside the Divine Land to take action after they were just forced by the Emperor Resentment to escape from the gate of the mountain of holy beings. Since the Emperor Resentment failed to hit the two warriors, it adjusted its direction and rushed towards them again. However, they no longer had any intentions of fighting the Emperor Resentment. The two of them were about to use the grand teleportation technique to move to the gate of the mountain of holy beings and stand guard. At that moment, Holy J, who was located 1,000 miles away, nodded at Estelle. Estelle wielded her scepter without the slightest hesitation, and an invisible force field enclosed her. In the blink of an eye, the force field spread throughout the whole of the Divine Land, from the North Star region to the South Dipper region, and from the floating islands to the Time Sea. An eerie silence descended over the entire place. In addition to sound, everyone's abilities were temporarily blocked. True gods were unable to communicate with their inner worlds, and holy beings were unable to communicate with their universes. Such a skill blocked nearly all of the strength of the whole Divine Land. Even the other Shore Realm warriors were not immune to the power of the Scepter of God's Silence. How could Hamish and Salim employ the grand teleportation technique? Not only could they not make use of this technique, but their flying abilities were blocked. They both plummeted down from midair. However, the Emperor Resentment's attack did not stop. It used its physical strength, so Estelle's spell could not seal it. A thick tentacle immediately hit the bodies of the two yellow Emperor guards. There was no sound, and the only sight was that two warriors rolled in the air like broken kites, their strings of blood leaving traces behind them. The two of them were not the only ones who were affected. The consummate true gods and demi-holy beings, who all flew into the sky in order to avoid the Time Sea's tsunami, were now dropping rapidly. As they fell down, their faces turned deathly pale. They were not afraid of falling down from a height of over 100,000 feet. However, the colorful sea water created by the tsunami swirled ominously below them, and falling into the Time Sea meant a sure, inescapable death. Chapter 2494, Entering the Mountain of Holy Beings. Meanwhile, Zen, Roche, and Sword Chen came out of the space channel as soon as the Scepter of God's Silence was activated. Throughout the divine land, only the three of them, Estelle and Holy J, were exempted from the effects of the scepter of God's silence. Zen and his two companions didn't stop for a second as they hurriedly left the space channel and rushed towards the gate of the Mountain of Holy Beings, which was just 100 feet away from them. But just as they were about to go there, the sea-cracking skull in the Hall of Holy Beings above the time sea suddenly opened its mouth. "What a good job! Your cooperation is so perfect, but it's such a pity." At that time, Layton was standing at the top of the Hall of Holy Beings, waving his hand in the direction of the Mountain of Holy Beings. Upon activation of the sea-cracking skull, the entire divine land slightly vibrated, with a strong smell of blood coming right out of its mouth. In fact, this vibration was quite similar to the one that happened when the Mountain of Holy Beings emerged, but in a weaker and less violent state. The scepter of God's silence used the power of the entire divine land to repress all the living beings in its territory, but during this process, the sea-cracking skull had actually broken free. Phew! Flowing from the distance, the blood torrents rolled towards the gate of the Mountain of Holy Beings. If Zen, Roche and Sword Chen forced their ways into the Mountain of Holy Beings, then they would definitely be washed away by the strong torrents. Despite the fact that the gate was only about 100 feet away, Roche and Sword Chen could not help but hesitate upon seeing that the torrents kept rolling faster and faster by the second. "Rush in," Zen roared as he ordered. They only had one chance, and there was no way back, so they had to quickly get inside as fast as they could. Upon hearing Zen's command, Roche and Sword Chen gnashed their teeth and sped up. Suddenly, the time jade seal in Zen's right hand appeared. But the moment he activated it, they were engulfed by the blood torrents. As all of this was happening, Layton was still standing at the top of the Hall of Holy Beings, looking indifferently at the Mountain of Holy Beings. Smiling, he said, "They should be dead." Before he could finish his words, he felt time fluctuate right before his eyes. From a distance, he clearly saw 3 ripples near the gate of the Mountain of Holy Beings. These ripples, however, indicated that the 3 were able to pass through the gate, meaning that they were not devoured by the bloody torrents. Dang it, I should have considered that Zen has the ability to erase time. In fact, Layton could still feel time being erased even when he was sealed in the lofty tree. But just now, the power of the scepter of God's silence spread out and attracted all of his attention. He thought that after he broke the imprisonment of the scepter of God's silence, Zen and his companions would definitely die, which was the reason why he ignored Zen's jade seal. Twitching his eyelids, he felt that he was being mocked. He stood still for a long period of time. Bang! The Hall of Holy Beings beneath his feet couldn't hold his strength anymore, and cracks spread out in front of the hall. The consummate true gods and the demi-holy beings who fell at high speeds were desperate as they were getting closer and closer to the colorful seawater. At that point, they already knew that death was knocking at the door. Luckily, they had maintained quite a height before, and the scepter of God's silence only lasted for a few seconds. Just when they were only about several hundred feet away from the sea surface, the effect of the scepter of God's silence had disappeared. Without the restrictions of the scepter of God's silence, everyone felt that their powers were back. Being back to normal, some people hurried to stop in the air, while some used the grand teleportation to move upwards. However, not everyone was lucky at that time. A consummate true god didn't maintain a height before he used the grand teleportation, making him fall into the sea. As a result, he was cut into pieces by the time fragments and later vanished in the sea. On the other hand, Hamish and Salim were sent flying by the tentacles of the Emperor Resentment. After retreating dozens of miles in the air, they fell onto the ground, making 2 big and deep pits. As soon as the effects of the scepter of God's silence had disappeared, the 2 immediately climbed out of the pits. Salim, with a gloomy face, gritted his teeth and said, "I'm going to chop this foolish beast into pieces." "With that, I agree," replied Hamish coldly and angrily. After finishing their words, they appeared on the Emperor Resentment's head in a flash. Meanwhile, Leaf knelt down on one knee on the other side of the Mountain of Holy Beings. Covered in bruises all over his body, he had one arm missing, while the other held a bronze dagger axe with all the strength that he had left. "It's really surprising. I didn't expect that a guy at the first stage of the other shore realm could have such means," said Xavier, as he walked towards Leaf. Leaf and Xavier had a huge difference when it came to their strength, but as they battled it out a while ago, Leaf was able to hold Xavier back. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, Leaf flipped his hand, and the bronze dagger axe changed its direction, stabbing Xavier again. "Now, you are like a spent arrow," sneered Xavier. He reached out his hand and grabbed the front end of the bronze dagger axe. Pulling it slightly, he took it away from Leaf's hand. At this moment, Leaf had used up his last strength and was not able to resist it anymore. You know what? I have always respected people with a strong fighting will. That is why I won't make you suffer when I kill you. At his words, he had raised the bronze dagger axe high and struck Leaf with a heavy thud. Not long after Leaf's death, the Emperor Resentment was unable to resist the attack of Salim and Hamish, letting out a long and sad screech. Just then, its huge body swayed sideways and later fell onto the ground with a loud bang. With the intensity of the fall, it never got up again. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away, Holy Jay saw this scene and let out a sigh. Even the holy beings are afraid of the Emperor Resentment. But I didn't expect it to be killed by the Yellow Emperor guards. Estelle shook her head as her face looked sad. In fact, she could only use the Scepter of God's Silence once in a period of time. If she could use it continuously, then she would probably be able to save Leaf. He wouldn't be killed as long as he had the chance to move to the space channel on the top of the Divine Land. Let's go. This place is too dangerous. What you did just now will surely alert the Yellow Emperor guards, Holy Jay explained. Estelle nodded and soon left quietly using the grand teleportation from the top of the mountain. This fierce battle did not last long. Seeing that the battle was over, the demi-holy beings and consummate true gods turned their attention back to the mountain of holy beings. They thought they could get in after such a long time. However, just as they approached the gate of the mountain of holy beings, Hamish suddenly appeared in front of the gate again, blocking their way. Plucking up his courage, one of the demi-holy beings asked, "Are we not allowed to enter the mountain of holy beings?" Although the Emperor Resentment had already been killed, Hamish still did not feel good at all. Coldly, he replied, "I will let you in, but not right now." Seeing that Hamish seemed to have a murderous intent, the crowd didn't dare to say anything. If this warrior at the other shore realm vented his anger on them, then they would die with grief plastered on their faces. Chapter 2495, Chasers. Leland was floating behind the crowd in silence, and his heart was filled with shock. He had wondered whether Zen would come, but he heard from someone that all the people who went to the Abyss Demon region had been killed, so he thought Zen died along with them. He didn't expect that Zen would be here, alive and healthy, entering the mountain of holy beings this way too. The powerhouses at the other shore realm knew that Zen would be coming, and that was why they'd been patiently waiting for him here. However, even with the three powerhouses joining forces, they still couldn't stop Zen. Who on earth was standing behind Zen and supporting him? Leland had once thought that he was a prominent figure in the Divine Land after he became a demi-holy being, but now, he began to reconsider his thoughts about it. The Divine Land was far from the simple way it looked, and there were many things that he still didn't know about. Not long after, a space wave appeared next to Hamish, and three people materialized out of it. Layden led the group, and his two companions were Samuel and Pascal. "Layden, I'm so sorry." Hamish bowed to Layden, feeling quite ashamed. Layden had always been calm, and his demeanor was a sound, undisturbed lake. But right now he had a murky expression on his face. He sighed and said, "It's not your fault. They indeed have a lot of methods." Samuel frowned and joined in, "I didn't expect Estelle to make a move this time." "Forget it." Layden waved his hand and directed his next words to the consummate true gods and demi-holy beings in front of him. "You all know that the chance of being holy beings is too small. You won't improve your strength much even after you become holy beings. But you are all highly talented, otherwise you wouldn't have cultivated with limited resources to reach this level. You will have a chance to reach the other shore realm in the future." Some people's eyes lit up with hope, while the others were still a little confused. All the members of the powerful clans knew what it meant to reach the other shore realm, but there were still many who didn't know. "What's the other shore realm?" someone from the crowd asked in a quiet voice. "The warriors at the other shore realm are the ones that manage to surpass the holy beings," Layden explained with a smile. "The difference between them is like that between the true gods and the divine citizens. We are warriors at the other shore realm." After hearing Layden's explanation, everyone finally understood. Some of the demi-holy beings and consummate true gods exclaimed with excitement. If they could be as powerful as Hamish and his group, then defeating the holy beings would be an easy feat. "I can help you reach the other shore realm," Layden continued as everyone went silent to listen. "But there is one condition." "What condition?" a red-haired demi-holy being asked him eagerly. "You have to enter the mountain of holy beings and kill those three people there," said Layden. "Two consummate true gods, and one demi-holy being. If we join hands and fight together, it won't be difficult for us to defeat them." "Where are they from?" The consummate true gods and demi-holy beings who didn't know what lay ahead were quite excited. They fought so fiercely for an opportunity to become holy beings. How much more struggle were they willing to be under for a chance to reach the other shore realm? Most of them could see hope, and it reflected with the determined fervor in their eyes. Only a few of them stayed calm, including Alfredo and Leland. Alfredo was well aware of what had happened in the Abyss Demon region, so he knew pretty well how powerful Zen was. Leland was also there to witness Zen's strength. Even the alliance of the powerful clans could not kill Zen. How could a group of demi-holy beings and consummate true gods probably defeat him? Weren't they being too naive? However, Layden had already given the order. Those who knew the truth kept their mouths shut and didn't dare to say anything. After seeing the enthusiastic reaction of the group, Layden was very satisfied. He said, "Good luck to all of you. Hamish, you can let them in now." Hamish nodded and got out of the way with Salim. The group hurriedly rushed into the gate and instantly disappeared, leaving only ripples behind them. When everyone was finally inside, Layden turned to Samuel and said, "I'm afraid these people may not be strong enough to kill them." "Of course, they can't. Even I can't, let alone them," said Samuel. "It seems that Pascal has to fight in person. Even if he can't become a holy being, he can enter the mountain of holy beings as a consummate true god." "But..." Samuel was a little hesitant to continue. "But what?" Layden asked. "I sent my 2 daughters to hunt Zen in the Black Water, but Zen seemed to have used a very strange method to forcefully break the spiritual connection between me and my daughters," said Samuel cautiously. "If I only send Pascal into the mountain, Zen may destroy the spiritual connection between us, and things might get tricky." "Don't overthink it. It's not a problem," Layden reassured him with a smile. Then he reached out and a small blood jade gourd suddenly appeared in his hand. "Hang this gourd around Pascal's neck. No matter what Zen does, it will be difficult for him to invade Pascal's mind." The blood jade gourd exuded a mysterious aura. Samuel's eyes instantly lit up when he saw it. He repeatedly thanked Layden and then took the jade gourd to his own hands before hanging it around Pascal's neck. Pascal didn't waste time and he immediately leapt and flew into the mountain of holy beings. Zen felt himself sink into a strange silver light as he passed through the gate of the mountain of holy beings. The silver light shone brightly, and Zen couldn't see anything. He couldn't even feel the existence of Rocher and Sword Chen. He could only move on by feeling things around him. A few moments had passed before Zen sensed the silver light had started to fade away, and then eventually he could see the road ahead. There was a large, silver valley right before him. After entering the valley, he waited for a while until he saw Rocher and Sword Chen emerge from the silver light too. "We're finally here," Rocher exclaimed excitedly. "Lucky for us," Sword Chen said, evidently still in a state of shock. Rushing into the mountain of holy beings in front of the Yellow Emperor guards, they took a considerable risk. Especially when the Yellow Emperor guard had broken free from the power of the Scepter of God's Silence, they had almost fallen into despair. Those who enter the mountain of holy beings first gain an advantage. "Let's move quickly," Zen said. The 3 of them flew forward along the valley without any hesitation. Not long after Zen and the other 2 were gone, the other consummate true gods and the demi-holy beings also reached the valley. "Haha, I'm not so interested in being a holy being now," said a consummate true god, who was from the south of the divine land and was a famous figure. "Indeed, if we can really reach the other shore realm, then becoming holy beings means nothing to us," said a thin demi-holy being. "But we can't underestimate the 3 people who managed to break in even with the Yellow Emperor guards securing the entrance," somebody said watchfully. It didn't matter though because they had already made their decisions. At least, in their eyes, killing Zen and the other 2 should be easier than fighting for a slight opportunity to become holy beings. The group of people tirelessly chased after Zen and his companions along the valley. The last one to come out of the silver light was Pascal with an expressionless face. Chapter 2496, A Siege. Zen, Rocher, and Sword Chen walked for more than 1,000 miles along the valley. With each step, the road before them became broader and broader. From the outside, the mountain of holy beings looked like an ordinary mountain, but its interior was not soil. The space was not cramped at all. Moreover, the silver light overhead gave them the feeling of walking under the sky, even if its color was a little strange. As Zen walked forward, he scanned the surrounding environment. Unlike everyone who would enter the mountain, his main concern was not the chance to become a holy being but rather finding the way out of the maze. Before he had entered the mountain, Mike had told him all about what to expect inside the mountain of holy beings. The space within the mountain of holy beings was vast, but it was not as complex as the other forbidden areas. When Zen, Rocher, and Sword Chen finally came to the end of the valley, they saw an open plain in front of them. The plain looked vast and endless. In the distance, there was a line where the plain seemed to merge with the sky made of silver light. Once the competition began, silver holy springs would appear in this plane. Anyone who could occupy one of the holy springs would become a holy being. However, the number of holy springs that would appear was different each time. It could be 2 or 3 or more. At the time when Mike had become a holy being, there had only been one holy spring. Therefore, Mike had beaten everyone else to become a holy being. The rules were simple, but occupying a holy spring was not an easy task. On one hand, warriors had to pass tests from the mountain of holy beings itself. On the other hand, they had to compete with other warriors for the chance to occupy a holy spring. I don't see any silver holy springs. With a light tap on the ground, Rocher flew up into the air and looked over the entire plain, which was completely empty. Perhaps it's not the time yet, Sword Chen said unworriedly. Zen took a few steps toward the plain. My father said that a certain number of people must arrive before the silver holy springs appear. Usually, when the mountain of holy beings appeared, a whole crowd of warriors would swarm in. But this time, only the 3 of them had arrived at the plain. It was likely that there were not enough people to start. Not long after Zen finished speaking, he felt a chaotic aura coming from behind him. He turned his head and saw dozens of people coming slowly from the valley. It had taken Zen only seconds to enter the mountain of holy beings from the spatial passageway, so he hadn't had time to pay attention to his competitors. Now that he looked around, he was surprised to see some acquaintances. Leland, Zen's eyes flashed when he saw him. Much to Zen's surprise, Leland seemed to have left the Abyss Demon region all by himself. He nodded his head lightly at Leland in the crowd. Leland opened his mouth slightly and, with his life vitality, said, Zen, be careful. These people want to kill you. At first, Zen was a little surprised to hear such a warning from Leland, but he soon realized what was happening. The Yellow Emperor guards would, of course, do everything they could to kill him. Since they were unable to enter the mountain themselves, they would definitely have sent some people to kill him. As if on cue, a group of demi-holy beings approached Zen in silence. Although they were expressionless and had completely concealed their killing intent, Zen could see right through them. These demi-holy beings were not from the large clans on the floating islands. In fact, they were even more arrogant and conceited than the ones who were, because they believed that the disciples from the large clans only relied on a large number of resources to become demi-holy beings. Everyone in this group was from a first-tier clan and had relied entirely on their own talent to become a demi-holy being. Naturally, they thought that both their strengths and talents were better than those of the demi-holy beings from the large clans. When they were still a few hundred feet away from Zen, Zen suddenly smiled and said, if you want to kill me, go ahead. You've been suppressing your killing intent for too long. I'm afraid you won't be able to bear it much longer. Exposed by Zen's words, the group of demi-holy beings immediately felt flustered. The leader of the group was a red-haired man. Since you already know our intentions, you should die obediently so that we don't have to waste our energy. He sneered. Zen sighed exaggeratedly as if he was fed up with them. If you stop now and give up this stupid thought, I'll spare your lives, and you can continue to strive for the chance to become holy beings. Spare our lives, the man echoed in surprise. The rest of them were taken aback too. In their eyes, Zen and his little group were completely cornered. But Zen still dared to be so arrogant. The red-haired man laughed. You are indeed very arrogant. Let me see how qualified you are to spare our lives, then. They are just 2 consummate true gods and 1 demi-holy being. We have more people and we are more powerful. Killing them is going to be a piece of cake. Led by the red-haired man, they all swarmed over. Aside from this group, there were a few people who stayed behind to watch. Alfredo and the others from the alliance of wealthy clans didn't move an inch. They hadn't become consummate true gods and demi-holy beings without being smart and talented. In their eyes, if the Yellow Emperor guards were willing to go to such lengths to kill Zen and his 2 companions, the 3 of them must be hard nuts to crack. Of course, the warriors who were charging at Zen and his companions were also smart and could have realized this if they had looked at this situation from an outsider's point of view. However, people always tended to overestimate themselves and underestimate others. They thought that no matter how powerful Zen and his companions were, they wouldn't stand a chance against tens of consummate true gods and demi-holy beings. Hearing what Zen said, Rocher and Sword Chen understood at once. As they watched the group of warriors charge at them, they had a glint of coldness in their eyes. Swoosh, swoosh, both of them drew their swords at almost the same time. When Sword Chen unsheathed his sword, his lips curved up into the slightest hint of a smile. Swoosh, swoosh, the sword threads that he created with the emotion closing godly way turned into a large golden net that flew out in front of him. In the Abyss Demon region, his strength was comparable to that of a top holy being, putting him on par with even Clark and Murphy. However, that was only because he could use the force of primitive fear when he was there. Outside the Abyss Demon region, he couldn't borrow the power of the dark water. Nevertheless, he was still strong enough to fight against ordinary holy beings by only using his emotion-closing godly way. What a powerful move! Feeling the power hidden in the sword net, the demi-holy beings in the front moved their bodies lightly and avoided the attack. None of them dared to face the net head-on. They were unable to use grand teleportation in the mountain of holy beings, but their bodily movement skills alone were good enough for them to avoid the attack. Moreover, since they were on an open plain, they had more than enough space to dodge. However, just as they dodged this net and prepared for a counterattack, they saw Rocher in front of them. They hadn't expected Rocher to charge at them alone. Water cloud hacking, mountain-splitting sword strike. The demi-holy beings all made their moves without hesitation. They didn't think that it was hard to deal with Rocher at all. But just as their internal momentum turned into their respective theurgy, a strange aura suddenly came from Rocher, and the killing intent in their heart disappeared without a trace. I can't cut it down. I can't do anything to him. What kind of ability is this? They felt a sacred aura emitting from Rocher that rendered them powerless against him. Chapter 2497, The Confrontation. While the warriors remained confused as to why they couldn't attack Rocher, the sword in Rocher's hand turned into a ray of light that headed straight for the three demi-holy beings in the front. These were highly experienced demi-holy beings. Although Rocher's power took them by surprise, they all managed to react quickly. Gentle wind twining. From the body of a demi-holy being emerged a gently breeze. Although harmless at first, countless thin gusts began to quickly coil like invisible ropes around Rocher's soaring snake sword. The breeze. Rocher's eyes widened. Despite the sharpness of his sword, it failed to inflict damage on the unshapely breeze. I've stopped him, the demi-holy being bellowed. We must trap him before he can make another move. Seeing this, other demi-holy beings followed suit. The burning flames evolved into long threads that headed straight for Rocher. Not long after, the life-godly way morphed into vines that ensnared him. Rocher's eyes slightly narrowed as he looked at these wise individuals. Rocher was a consummate true god. He would have been unable to deal with several demi-holy beings if he hadn't gone to the Abyss Demon region. However, he was different now. Before the demi-holy beings' attacks could reach him, tiny ice flowers appeared in front of him. Once the threads of flames reached the ice flowers, the flames immediately disappeared and were replaced by ice. The vines headed towards Rocher turned to ice as well. The chilly air that ran along the vines turned the fierce flames into frosty ice flowers. Even the gentle breezes couldn't escape being turned into ice, their outlines now visible due to the ice flowers floating in the air. What energy is this? Is this the mysterious ice godly way? Impossible. The mysterious ice godly way isn't that frightening. Back off. The demi-holy beings looked terrified. Although a warning was sent out, Rocher's ice flowers were too fast. The three demi-holy beings that tried to trap Rocher had no time to retreat and were quickly attacked by the ice flowers. Before any of them could respond, they were turned into ice sculptures, the look of shock so vivid on their frozen faces. If the demi-holy beings met the same frozen fate at the hands of the mysterious ice godly way, they could break out of it. Rocher's ice flowers, however, weren't ordinary, for if they made contact with the demi-holy beings, then the life would be instantly sucked out of them. The crowd that wanted to fight Rocher stopped immediately. Earlier, the demi-holy beings and consummate true gods were excited to challenge Rocher. Now, they looked at him with horror as if staring at a fiend. With his sword in one hand, he gently raised the other to swirl a tiny ice flower. He then said, "I wonder if I have the qualifications to spare your lives." No one spoke. They continued to stare at the ice flower in his hand. Never before had they witnessed a method such as this. Even those who practiced the mysterious ice godly way to the consummation couldn't hold a candle to Rocher in terms of playing with ice. They realized that they were no match for Rocher. If they made the rash decision to rush forward, they would die. Alfredo and the others from the large clans on the floating islands were smart enough to not make a move. A serious look was plastered on all their faces. This guy's power is quite intimidating. I wonder if Zen is stronger than him, Alfredo thought to himself as he looked at Zen. Zen stood quietly behind Rocher and Sword Chen. It appeared that he didn't intend on moving 1 inch. Just as the two sides were about to reach a standstill, a terrifying aura suddenly burst from the valley depths as if millions of beasts were emerging out of the earth. A stench followed it and made everyone's head turn towards the source, hoping to suppress their fear. Whoosh! Everyone focused on the streak of black light that appeared. It turned out to be a black spear that headed quickly for Rocher. Zen's expression changed at the sight of the spear. He ordered, "Rocher, retreat." Rocher also sensed the black spear's power. With a light tap of his toes, he withdrew. Boom! The black spear pierced the exact spot where Rocher was standing earlier. The spear was completely transformed by the Abyss Demon region's energy, melting like a black candle upon piercing the ground. The resulting black puddle on the ground had wispy black auras that soared towards the sky with their faint miserable screams. The area had become purgatory. A few moments later, a figure floated over from the valley. It was a man with a pair of black wings on his back and a blood-red, gourd-shaped pendant on his chest. A hostile look was plastered over his normally handsome face. It's Pascal. What's he doing here? What is that power? What's going on? Whether it was Rocher's ice flowers or Pascal's black spear, neither of them could be controlled by normal consummate true gods. Not even holy beings were that strong. This battle would be beyond their control, like a confrontation between two immortals. Pascal flew over and gazed at Zen before addressing him. Even the Yellow Emperor guards couldn't stop you from entering the mountain of holy beings. Mike is really hard to deal with. However, it's such a shame that all of you will have to die here today. Zen stared at Pascal and retorted with a smile, "Whether we die today or not isn't for you to decide. That will be answered when we're done fighting. But before that, I'll have to admit that I do feel sorry for you, being turned into a puppet by your father and all." Upon hearing this, all the bystanders looked at each other in shock and confusion. Pascal, a puppet, by his father. Alfredo's brows furrowed and then raised abruptly. He was already aware of the changes that Pascal, Laquisha, and Elena had undergone even before entering the Abyss Demon region. What he wasn't aware of was how cruel Samuel could be to do such a thing to his children. Pascal, or rather, Samuel in Pascal's body, was clearly irritated with the fact that Zen had exposed him in front of all those witnesses. Just as Pascal was about to attack, Zen revealed, "I've restored Laquisha's and Elena's memories. They're both disappointed in you, Elena especially. She never thought her own father would be capable of such cruelty." Even when the two girls stayed within the fairy palace, Zen could sense that they still had certain feelings toward the Han clan. Their father's poor treatment of them was unacceptable. "Stop," Pascal interrupted him. A fierce light shot out of his eyes and his black wings trembled as he began charging towards Zen. Chapter 2498, The Black Ball. As Pascal charged at Zen, a black spear appeared in his hand. Zen's expression had also turned serious. Although Pascal was just a consummate true god, he had control over the Abyss Demon region. And the person behind him was none other than Samuel. Whoosh! Just as the black spear was about to stab him, Zen gently twisted his body and avoided Pascal's attack. Ever since he had mastered the truth of cultivation nature, his every move contained the truth of godly way. While avoiding the spear, Zen stretched out his arm and turned it over. Red lotus flowers rapidly blossomed and spread out from his arm. The moment they appeared, the temperature everywhere within a radius of 10 miles rose. The demi-holy beings and consummate true gods immediately felt overwhelmed by the heat. The red lotus flowers quickly spread and twined around the black spear. If they could encircle Pascal's body, he would probably be burned to ashes in an instant. Even a holy being like Clark, who was skilled in the elementary fire godly way, hadn't been able to escape these red lotus flowers. Even though Pascal controlled the Abyss Demon region, his body hadn't been reinforced to a great extent. In Zen's eyes, there was no way Pascal could resist his attack. However, Pascal shook his spear lightly, and the red lotus flowers twining around it cracked into pieces. "Humph," Pascal said gruffly. Zen's eyes flashed with surprise. The red lotus flowers hadn't been able to transfer the black energy. In the Abyss Demon region, Zen's red lotus flowers and Rocher's ice flowers had been able to transfer almost all energy. But now, the red lotus flowers seemed to have no effect on Pascal's black energy. After the red lotus flowers cracked, Pascal didn't stop. The tip of his spear drew an arc in the air and came straight toward Zen's face. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Zen suddenly turned his body and released hundreds of red lotus flowers that quickly shot forth and enveloped Pascal. As long as they found a slight gap, they would be able to kill him. However, at this moment, the ring in Pascal's hand flashed. Buzz! More black energy came out of Pascal's body and instantly transformed into a set of black armor that tightly covered him from head to toe, making it impossible for the hundreds of red lotus flowers to find a gap. When Pascal shook his body, all the red lotus flowers cracked once again. "You want to kill me in this way?" How childish you are. With a derisive laugh, Pascal waved his spear at Zen, shooting out a ring of black energy that fell over him. Zen frowned slightly and rushed in another direction, trying to escape from the ring. However, it was too late, as the ring transformed into a black ball, completely trapping Zen within it. Your movement technique is not bad, but there is no way to escape now. With a sneer, Pascal suddenly pinched the black ball in the air. Zen, stop. Both Sword Chen and Rocher took action at this moment. Sword Chen's long sword slashed out. The threads of sword radiance formed a fine net that flew down toward Pascal and the black ball to envelop them both. However, Pascal's black energy was extremely unique and was insusceptible to almost any other energy. In fact, Pascal didn't even dodge the attack. A harsh sound echoed through the area when the threads of sword radiance cut his body, but he didn't get hurt at all. At the same time, Rocher shot a bunch of ice flowers at Pascal. Both ice flowers and red lotus flowers had the same function. Although they weren't powerful on their own, they could transform anything they touched. One would solidify all other energy while the other would violently burn all other energy. However, Pascal was not afraid of Zen's red lotus flowers nor Rocher's ice flowers. Seeing this scene, Rocher couldn't help but feel anxious. In the Abyss Demon region, Zen and Rocher were able to fight together without fear of any holy being's tricks, because the ice flowers and the red lotus flowers were complementary and could transform any energy for the two of them to use. Unfortunately, Pascal's black energy was able to resist any sort of transformation. Even if Zen and Rocher managed to establish a connection, it would be meaningless. Buzz. Powerful energy was released all of a sudden, filling the black ball. The area covered by the ball was like mad, and any creature within it would be annihilated. However, about 9 seconds later, Zen stepped out of the other side of the ball, tainted with a faint aura of the time law. He had had no other choice but to use the time jade seal again. Outside the mountain of holy beings, Samuel was floating in the air with his legs crossed. He frowned when he saw the scene through Pascal's eyes. It had been a huge mistake to let the time jade seal fall into Zen's hands. After wiping out a period of time, Zen had almost turned into an immortal being. As Samuel moved his mouth slightly outside the mountain of holy beings, Pascal said in a cold voice, "You might be able to get away this time, but the time jade seal won't always be able to help you. Do you want to give it another try? Do you think you can still escape next time?" As Pascal gently waved his right hand, another huge black ring appeared, this time with a diameter of 5 miles. Buzz. The ring trembled and fell downward. Retreat. Don't let the ring cover you. Is Pascal going to kill us too? Not far behind Pascal, there were 10 warriors who were patiently watching the battle. However, they had never expected to get involved in it. By the time the black ring appeared, it was too late for them to escape. As soon as the ring touched the ground, it transformed into a ball and trapped everyone within. "I'll kill all of you this time," Pascal said coldly. "Pascal, I'm part of the alliance of powerful clans. Why are you getting me involved in this?" shouted a demi-holy being. Bang, bang, one of them used a thurgy to try to break the ball, but their strength was not on the same level as Pascal's. Even if they tried their best, it would still be impossible for them to break the ball. "Go to perdition, all of you." With a murderous look in his eyes, Pascal pinched lightly with his right hand. When the black energy spread within the ball, everyone would be annihilated, including Zen. Samuel was actually not a hard-hearted man. He had felt uneasy and ashamed after hearing the news that Laquisha and Elena had recovered their memories. Even if he was powerful and ambitious, he didn't know how to face his children in this situation. As a result, even though Laquisha and Elena had recovered to their normal status, his resentment against Zen was still growing. At this moment, a brown sword radiance suddenly came out and hit the inner wall of the ball. Then the long sword in Zen's hand broke into pieces and scattered on the ground. Ever since his shadow-bearing sword was swallowed, Zen hadn't found a long sword that he could use. Ordinary supreme primordial weapons couldn't bear the way's blending energy at all. Thus, when he had tried to launch a strike with this long sword, its blade had immediately shattered. Zen's sword radiance had merged more than 500 godly ways, and this was the first time he had tried to use it against an enemy. Chapter 2499, Darkness. The over 2,500 godly ways were completely integrated, which was close to Zen's limit. When Zen finally released the way's blending energy, it was stable enough to turn into sword radiance and rapidly charge forward. When it hit the inner wall of the black sphere, however, it became disturbed and unsteady. The way's blending energy, which was the perfect combination of various godly ways, exploded. It was as if a bright sun had suddenly shone across the sky and emitted an intense light, accompanied by a violent explosive sound. Bang! Although the black sphere was very stable and near unbreakable, it had its limits. The moment when the wave's blending energy exploded, cracks began to appear on the surface of the sphere until it eventually collapsed, sending powerful shock waves throughout the area. Rocher, Sword Chen, and the demi-holy beings who had been trapped inside the sphere were thrown out in all directions, like kites with their strings cut off. Those outside the sphere, including Alfredo and Leland, were also physically blown away by the force. However, none of them had heard the explosive sound as it had shattered their eardrums and rendered them deaf. Fortunately, such small injuries would heal very quickly, but for now, their sense of hearing was gone. Only Zen and Pascal remained standing on the plane. Pascal's body was still covered in the black armor, revealing only a pair of eyes under his black helmet. Astonishment filled his eyes as he looked at Zen. Samuel had been willing to send Pascal to the mountain of holy beings only because he was determined to take Zen's life. He didn't think it was a difficult task. After all, he had seen all of Zen's tricks in the Abyss Demon region and estimated his strength. He was even aware of the power of the Time Jade Seal and the method Zen once used to remove the soul marks in his two daughters. But now, it turned out that he had still underestimated Zen. Zen's strength seemed to have increased greatly after his departure from the Abyss Demon region. You are merely 100 years old, and you spent most of your time in the secondary world. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that someone could have become so powerful in such a short period of time. Pascal said, "It's a pity that someone so talented like you is my enemy." Zen took out another long sword from his space ring and said softly, "Our common enemy was Nicholas, and we had the chance to work together. Unfortunately, you seem determined to go down this dark road to replace him. You even sacrificed your own children for this cause. Mark my words, you will regret it." "And what makes you think that?" Pascal smiled faintly. "This." As soon as his voice fell, Zen stomped on the ground and charged at Pascal, leaving a series of ghost shadows in his wake. As he moved, he quickly asked number 9527 to help him erase Samuel's soul mark. Pascal was only a puppet, after all. Once the soul mark was erased, he would be like a piece of treasure without an owner. And as for whether to move Pascal's memory flame back into his body, it could be decided later. The real Pascal's stance still remained to be seen. However, Zen had briefly come in contact with him twice and thought him to be an honest man. He believed that Pascal would side with his two sisters, rather than with his tyrannical father. The internal momentum in Zen's body was continuously surging into his long sword, giving it the power of lightning. The sword was buzzing with so much energy that it seemed like it would shatter at any time. Pascal's face darkened. For the first time, he decided to retreat. However, Zen was so fast that Pascal couldn't dodge his attack. In a flash, Zen launched the wave's blending strike once again. Another beam of light shone brightly in front of Pascal. The layer of black armor that covered him was extremely thick, but the force produced by the explosion of the wave's blending energy created a crack that tore the armor open from the middle. "Now, it's the right time," Zen told number 9527 in his heart. Whoosh, whoosh, number 9527 surged out of Zen's chest and headed straight for Pascal's mind. However, just when it was halfway to Pascal, the blood jade necklace on Pascal's chest suddenly flashed, releasing beams of faint red light that blocked its way. This is blood soul jade. Such a rare thing actually exists in the divine land. No matter how significant number 9527 was, it was still just a soul fragment and couldn't go up against the blood soul jade in such a short amount of time, anyway. But it was confident that if it had enough time, it would be able to find the flaws in the barrier formed by the blood soul jade and break through it. Unfortunately, the opening it had now lasted only for a second. Now that the blood jade necklace was activated, Pascal's broken armor repaired itself, and the huge wings on Pascal's back flapped like huge scissors as they came toward Zen's head. Phew, with the sudden turn of events, Zen had no choice but to retreat. Number 9527 also returned back to his chest. "Even you can't break it with your ability?" Zen asked with a frown. "I can, but I need more time," number 9527 said in an unhappy tone. "The blood soul jade is rare even in the source world. It can suppress my secret skill. Time." A bitter smile appeared on Zen's face. It would be difficult for him to buy more time. Pascal rose up in the air again. At this moment, Samuel was glad that he had blocked Zen's attack. If it weren't for the necklace, his soul mark would have been erased. "Some methods aren't for you to use," Pascal continued. Ever since I gained control of the Abyss Demon region, I have been trying to figure out the secrets within it. Unfortunately, that ring didn't give me any clues. What exactly is this energy? How should I use it? There are so many questions. The power of the Abyss Demon region that Samuel had comprehended through Pascal was, after all, something that was secondhand. Although he had control of the Abyss Demon region, he hadn't brought out its power. Fortunately, I have gained some new insight during this period of time. In fact, the role of the Abyss Demon region should be to help destroy the Divine Land. Pascal said as he raised his hand. Black aura swirled around his right hand and quickly turned into a pure black hole that devoured light. At this moment, the entire Divine Land fell into darkness. Even the originally dazzling sun died down to a small dot that shrunk and shrunk until it eventually disappeared. The entire Divine Land was now shrouded in complete darkness. No one in any part of the Divine Land was able to produce any light, not even if they lit torches or activated luminous stones. All the light had been taken away by Pascal. Chapter 2500, The Running Warriors. The entire Divine Land was in a panic. Darkness was not a big obstacle to a true god. When one's eyes were unable to see anything, they could use their spiritual sense to perceive instead. However, this kind of darkness had never happened before. No one knew what this kind of darkness meant. Speculations ran rampant, and ignorance fueled the panic people felt. Is it doomsday? Is the Divine Land about to be destroyed? How long will this darkness last? Will it last forever? Most of the divine citizens from the remote mountain villages and the true gods of the central divine cities gathered under the cover of darkness. They wondered, discussed, and guessed about the nature of the darkness. Zen also couldn't see anything with his eyes. Even if he activated his magic vision, it still had no effect. This was because Pascal blocked all the sources of light. If Zen wanted to see in the darkness with his magic vision, he still needed the help of faint beams of light. At that moment he was trapped in darkness. With a deep inhale, he released his spiritual sense. Rocher, Sword Chen, many demi-holy beings and the consummate true gods also released their spiritual sense. All of a sudden, waves of soul force spread throughout the plane. Meanwhile, Pascal held a black ball in his hand. It was releasing a very powerful aura. This aura was very similar to the destructive godly ways aura, albeit much, much stronger. He raised the black ball high and said darkly, "It's over." Hardly had his voice faded away when Zen, Rocher and Sword Chen noticed that the same destructive aura was coming from above their heads. With a sweep of their spiritual sense, they realized that there was a black ball above each of their heads. "Don't let them touch you. Let's go." Rocher and Sword Chen promptly flew backward and away from the black balls. Meanwhile, Zen jumped lightly from side to side. He turned into a sharp arrow and swiftly retreated. Whoosh, whoosh, black spears shot down from each ball. As each spear touched the ground, they suddenly released terrifying energy and annihilated every area they touched. Zen continued to run away, as the black spears fell like a violent storm around him. The areas he passed were destroyed upon contact with the spears. Rocher and Sword Chen also dodged as Zen did. They couldn't stop for even a second, as their lives were on the line. The black balls above their heads followed their every move. They continuously produced black arrows that struck almost at their heels, as they hurried away. The areas he can affect are limited. We should separate, Zen shouted in the darkness. Rocher and Sword Chen immediately moved faster in response. Sword Chen dashed toward the side of the valley. Fleeing, ha ha, Pascal stood in the air with a mocking expression on his face. With no warnings, he spread the scope of his attack all over the plain. He watched in glee as the people panicked. The other demi-holy beings and consummate true gods had long realized that they could not participate in a battle of this level. For fear of being accidentally injured, they all retreated to the edge of the valley. However, Pascal took one long look at them as if in deep thought. Suddenly, a wicked smile spread on his face. Black balls appeared one by one over these warriors' heads. What's this? Some of them noticed the black balls above their heads. They cried out in alarm when they realized that they were being targeted too. Run, this guy is insane. Does this guy want to kill everyone? The demi-holy beings and consummate true gods panicked, and they ran as fast as they could. A consummate true god reacted just a bit slowly, and a black spear pierced him through the shoulder. A pained shout escaped him, as the spear nailed him to the ground. Suddenly, the black spear melted and oozed out of him. It left his body destroyed and lifeless. Everyone realized the very real danger they were in and started to run away faster. Of course, Alfredo and Leland were running as well. Whoosh, whoosh. Alfredo's face was full of grief and indignation as he ran. He drew an arc along the ground at an extremely fast speed and left the black spears behind him. When he approached Pascal, he roared at him, "Pa! Holy Emperor, do you also want to kill me?" An indifferent expression appeared on Pascal's face. He thought for a short moment, and then the black light ball above Alfredo's head disappeared. Samuel didn't care about the lives of these people, but he decided not to kill Alfredo since he had been loyal to him all this time. Alfredo heaved a sigh of relief when the black ball above him disappeared. From afar, screams resounded constantly. More and more people were stabbed by long spears and killed. "Holy Emperor, are you going to kill everyone?" Alfredo cupped his hands in front of Pascal. Before this, Samuel had doubts about letting others know his control over Pascal, but now he didn't care about it anymore. Under Samuel's control, Pascal said indifferently, "After all of these warriors are killed, no one will compete against you for the title of Holy Being. Wouldn't you like that?" When Alfredo heard that, his heart skipped a beat. He was displeased earlier because he was almost killed. But now, he didn't feel furious anymore. He put on a flattering smile on his face and said, "Thank you, Holy Emperor. If the Han clan has one more holy being, our clan would be more powerful." Pascal gave a faint smile and nodded his head. Samuel had seen the strength of the other Shore Realm warriors, and honestly, he did not take the holy beings seriously. Layden had said that the holy beings were just true gods who owned the rebirth land, which was their universe, and gave the holy beings more power. This made the holy beings much more powerful than the consummate true gods. However, in essence, they still relied on the power of the godly way. In this sense, only the other Shore Realm warriors were the real masters. "These warriors run here and there like rats, so how can you kill them?" Alfredo asked. "Run, didn't you notice?" Pascal raised an eyebrow at Alfredo. He only smirked when Alfredo looked confused, but he didn't elaborate. When he realized he wouldn't get any answers, Alfredo spread his spiritual sense into the darkness again. He could feel the destructive aura everywhere in the plain. It appeared that most of the long spears from the black balls didn't hit their targets. But as they melted, they spread in all directions rapidly, like ink over clear water. The longer they spent running around, the more black energy spread throughout the whole plain. Sooner or later, it would cover everything. By then, these people would have no way to escape. Some warriors had stopped running by this time. They, too, had realized what was happening. Zen circled the plain. When he came back, he found that the long spears behind him had blended into the ground, radiating an aura of destruction. This aura continued to spread. It wouldn't be long before the whole plain and valley were filled up with the aura. "Rocher, we can't go on like this," Zen uttered worriedly. Rocher, who was standing in the distance, agreed and said, "If we fly, we can dodge the black energy. However, after this place is filled with that energy, Samuel would definitely take further action. All the people in the mountain of holy beings would be slaughtered. We need to stop him before that happens," Zen said as he ran madly. "Pascal has a soul weapon. If I can break that, I can rid Pascal completely of Samuel's control." When he heard this, Rocher raised his eyebrows in confusion.